Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 2. Sweetheart, Kushina said softly, hoping to calm her son. Naruto turned such a fierce glare on her that the beautiful redhead couldn't help but flinch back, as if struck by him physically. Stay away from me, he screamed out. Turning to Rias, he narrowed his eyes and said, "This is what you meant. You recruited her. And you," he exclaimed, turning to face the Hokage. "You knew, didn't you? Don't answer that. Of course you knew." Rias looked incredibly saddened by what she was seeing and hearing. She was also incredibly worried about her beloved Rook. She didn't know what to say, or even what she should say. Despite how much pain it caused her, she couldn't help but pray to God that she wouldn't lose him in any sense. Hiruzen flinched and found he couldn't even look Naruto in the eyes. "Naruto-kun, I don't want to hear it. Not from any of you. Goddammit," the blonde exclaimed before he stormed out of the room, completely ignoring his mother and everyone else in the room. His head was killing him now and he felt like he could throw up at any second. Once Naruto had left, Rias started to cry and fell to her knees, unable to bear the guilt and the shame at what she had done, depriving Naruto of his mother the way she had. All she could think at the moment was how she hoped her Naruto-kun would forgive her and they could go on being happy together, just as she wanted. Kushina began to sob, unable to take the pain anymore. She knew her son would likely be upset, but she couldn't go against her orders. Taking a moment to think on it, she hung her head and thought, "I should have just ignored them and gone to see my son. Minato, you stupid fool. And you." Looking into the Hokage's eyes, Kushina glared hard at him and said, "I never should have listened to you. If I had just ignored the orders given to me, my son would have grown up loved with people adoring him as it was meant to be. I'm going to find my son and be there for him. To hell with all of you." Hiruzen sighed as he watched Kushina hurry out of the room to find her son. After a while of silence, he said, "There is the matter of his inheritance to be discussed. I think he deserves what's his by right. I trust nobody's against this decision. The boy technically died, Hiruzen. I say we take what was left to him and put it to good use. There is no reason to give the boy what's no longer his." Danzo said, a sneer on his face. "Besides, it would be wasted on him." Before anyone could say anything in response, Rias' power flared damn near uncontrollably. Danzo would have said something, but he was soon struck by a condensed ball of Rias' power of destruction. When he simply reappeared a moment later, the crimson-haired beauty flew at him, not giving a shit that her wings were in plain view for everyone now. Upon reaching Danzo, she ripped off his bandages, revealing to everyone what was underneath. The others looked on in disgust at what was revealed. "What the hell have you done, Danzo?" Hiruzen exclaimed angrily. "You abomination." Danzo simply scoffed as he dodged Rias' attacks to the best of his ability. "I did what was best for Konoha, old friend." "Bullshit," Rias exclaimed furiously. "All you ever think about is yourself. You're not some diehard patriot you pretend to be. All you've ever done is what benefits yourself. Now die, you asshole." The old man scoffed and was prepared to strike the redhead down, only to blink when his deformed arm fell from his body, hitting the ground at his feet. Glancing behind him, he saw Yuto there, swiping the blood off his sword. This was a mistake, however, as Rias' power of destruction enveloped him again and removed him from existence. "Damn that monster." Hiruzen sighed and shook his head. "Damn him. Thank you, Rias-chan. Now that that particular problem has been taken care of, are we all in agreement that Naruto-kun should be given what's his?" Most of the others voiced their agreement. However, when all eyes turned on him, Hiashi frowned deeply and shook his head. "I must disagree. As much as I despise the man, Danzo had a point. Naruto's inheritance would be better used by the village than it would be if we gave it to Naruto. When he died, he forfeited all right to his inheritance." Kaniko's extra features appeared and she growled angrily at Hiashi. "You're an enemy too," she said quietly. Then, before Hiashi or anyone else could react, She lunged across the table and slammed her fist as hard as she could into the Hyuga head's face, sending him flying out of his chair and through the nearby wall, and perhaps even further than that. Without waiting for anything, not even her master's command, Kaneko chased after Hiashi, prepared to beat him to death if need be. Hiruzen scowled and called out for his Anbu. Hurrying with them and the members of Rias peerage, they arrived to see the beautiful lowly stalking angrily towards the injured Hyuga. Kaneko-chan, stand down. You can't kill him, no matter how much you want to right now. The aged Hokage exclaimed, trying to get her to calm down. The white-haired beauty ignored him and walked right up to the downed Hyuga. Lifting him up by his hair, she reared back her fist, only for someone to grab it and prevent her from delivering the fatal punch. Don't, Kaneko-chan. He's not worth it. Practically snarling at this point, Kaneko spoke without ever looking back at Rias. So you're allowed to kill that old fossil and I'm not allowed to punish this man for daring to try and take what's Naruto-kun's? He's my boyfriend, damn it. In her shock, Rias let go of Kaneko, completely caught off guard by what her other rook had just proclaimed. She wasn't aware of just how close her two rooks had become. However, this proved to be a mistake as, without a second thought, Kaneko punched Hiashi so hard in the fact that his head was practically destroyed. With a few more good punches, she smiled wickedly as she let the Hyuga clan head drop dead to the ground. My Naruto-kun. Hiruzen sighed and shook his head sadly. Damn it. Now what the hell am I supposed to do? The Hyuga clan will demand answers. They'll demand that somebody be punished for this. Rias frowned and shook her head. Call his children and the elders of the clan together. We'll tell them the truth about what happened. We'll have to spin it in a way that helps them understand that Danzo and Hiashi were traitors to the village, in a sense. They were trying to meddle in Uzumaki clan affairs and had to pay the price for it. They can whine and fuss all they want, but in the end, they can't do anything because the two of them were trying to steal from another clan. The third Hokage scratched at his chin and beard for a moment before he nodded in understanding. That's as good a plan as any. We'll need to get Kushina to help explain things to them in that case. Which means we'll have to interrupt her time with Naruto-kun. If she's found him. When Naruto-kun doesn't want to be found, it's damn near impossible to find him. Rias simply smiled and said, she's his mother. If anyone can find him, I'm sure she can. But for now, I'll go get her. We're going to need her to settle things with the Hyuga clan for us. Hiruzen simply nodded at her and said, please do so. I'm honestly hoping she hasn't found him yet. Poor Naruto-kun's been through enough for the time being. The redhead sighed and said, I know how you feel. I just hope he can find it in him to forgive me. Hiruzen and the others watched as Rias flew off in search of Kushina. Once she was gone, he looked to her peerage members and asked, what are you all going to do? Go in search of Naruto-kun? Or do you want to be there for the meeting? Haku scowled and said, I'm going to find Naruto-kun. Looking at Kaneko, they nodded to one another, deciding to work together to find him. Zabuza, I'll see you later. Naruto-kun needs us. And with that, she and Kaneko hurried off to find their shared boyfriend. Yuto sighed and shook his head in disappointment. I hate to say this, Hokage-sama, but you and Rias-sama messed up in a pretty big way. I'll aid in the search for Naruto-kun, but, as you said, he can be difficult to find. He said before walking off to try and find his friend. Akino simply glared at the Hokage and took Gasper by the hand, walking off with him so they could try and find Naruto as well. This left the Hokage with Zabuza, Kakashi, and Sakura, who were each looking a bit unsure about what they should be doing. After a short while though, Sakura excused herself and hurried off in search of Naruto. She hoped she could help him through this situation and make him feel better. She honestly hated the idea of him hurting in any way. Hokage-sama, would you mind explaining to us how Kushina-sama is alive? Why hide her from her son? Kakashi questioned, his eye narrowing at the aged Hokage. Hiruzen sighed and motioned for Kakashi and Zabuza to follow him back to his office. I'll explain when we're back in the council chambers. I'm sure everyone's wondering exactly what's going on. Kakashi and Zabuza could only nod at that, but stayed quiet as they followed the aged man back to the council chambers. They realized that they'd likely have to get the wall repaired as well. Naruto scowled as he watched his supposed mother try to find him. Contrary to what people might think, he was exceptionally skilled at stealth, keeping hidden even in plain sight. And right now, he didn't want this bitch, as he considered her, to find him. Slipping away again, Naruto went off and journeyed into the forest of death. Hardly anyone would actually think to look for him in there, and there were so many more places he could hide within the forest. It was the perfect place to just hide out and think about everything. Once he found a decent place to hide and relax, Naruto laid down on the branch he was perched on and stared upwards at the little bit of sunlight trickling through the leaves up above. Damn them. That rat bastard of a Hokage lied to me all my fucking life. If he knew why my mom was alive, then he definitely kept her from me for some reason. Then there's Rias. I trusted her. If I'm right, then my mom is Rias' other bishop. Which means Rias kept her from me as well. All my fucking life even. I know I promised her I'd save her from that loveless marriage, and I'll keep my word, but I don't think I can ever look at her the same again. He thought sadly. Then there's her. Naruto thought to himself with a scowl. If she's my mother, she should have just come to me. Screw what the old man and Rias said. If she truly gave a shit about me, she would have found a way to be with me. That bridge has been burned. I don't need a mother now. I don't need her. Naruto would have continued thinking on all of this, but somebody with black wings landed on the branch and smiled at him. Blinking a few times, he stared at the person and realized that she was incredibly attractive. For some reason, he found himself feeling at peace with her. He wasn't quite sure why, but he felt he could trust this woman. Hi, name's Naruto. Who are you? The black-haired, black-winged woman sauntered closer to the blonde and smiled somewhat seductively at him. Naruto-kun, I'm glad you've returned. My name is Rainer and I've truly missed you. I've wanted to meet you in person for so long now. I stayed my hand, though, because you were always around those devils. I can tell, you've become one of them, haven't you, Naruto-kun? The whiskered teen nodded and sat up so he could have a friendly chat with this woman. Yes. My teammate, Sasuke Uchiha, killed me on the mission. Rias had to use one of her evil pieces to revive me. If not for her, I'd still be dead and I'd never have returned to the village. Rainer looked upset by that before she moved in close and hugged him close. I'm sorry, sweetheart. If only I had been there for you sooner. I've been watching you since you got back home. They kept so many secrets from you, and now your mother. Naruto scowled and shook his head. I don't know who she is, but she's no mother of mine. Anyways, looking into the woman's eyes, Naruto asked, why are you so interested in me anyways? The beautiful woman smiled sadly at him and said, your father asked me to watch over you in case something happened to him. I wanted to reveal myself to you sooner, but those devils aren't exactly on friendly terms with we fallen angels. Seeing his confusion at the term, Rainer scowled and said, Grimori hasn't even told you anything about the various races or anything, has she? Naruto shook his head again and said, no. She insisted that we wait until we were in the safety of her home before talking about anything. Too many eyes and ears in the land of waves. Rainer sighed softly and said, then I'll just have to tell you everything I can. You deserve to know the truth. First though, you ask me why I'm so interested in you. I've chosen you to be my husband. Naruto blushed and asked, husband? What do you mean? The violet-eyed fallen angel leaned in and captured his lips with hers. When they parted, she said, I've watched you growing up in this village. You've endured everything this village has thrown at you and stayed strong in the face of it all. You're a bright light in the darkness, illuminating everything around you. You provide a sense of warmth when everything else remains cold. Your father would have been so proud of you, Naruto-kun. I admit I had something of a crush on him before he passed away. He married Kushina-san though, and I was left with an unrequited love. Seeing you, at first I felt like I was simply projecting my feelings for him onto you. But the more I watched you, the more I got to know you as a person, the more genuine my feelings for you became. I've come to love you with all my heart, and all I ever wanted was for you to be happy and safe from harm. I never expected you to become friends with those devils, however. If there weren't such hostilities between our species, I'd have introduced myself to you so much sooner than this. Sweetheart, I love you dearly. Will you accept me into your life? I know it's a bit much to ask for you to be in a relationship with me, but. Naruto sighed and closed his eyes before leaning back against the tree. It's okay, Ray-chan. I'm not upset with you. But, can you tell me who my father was? I have my suspicions, but I need to be sure. Rainer smiled sadly at him and said, your father is the very man that sealed the Kyuubi no Yoko within you. Minato Namikaze. He was a good man, but more than a bit naive. He truly believed that the village would see you as a hero for holding the Kyuubi at bay. As we both know, that didn't happen. For a while, Naruto clenched his fists and bit his lip until he drew blood from both of his palms and his bottom lip. Taking a few deep, calming breaths, he shook his head again and said, I see. That's what I thought. Thank you, Rainer-chan. I'm willing to listen to anything you have to say now. So please, tell me everything that has been kept from me. The beautiful fallen angel simply smiled sweetly at him and pulled him in close, hugging him tight. While his head rested snugly against her, she said, well, the first thing I should tell you is about the three factions. There's angels, fallen angels, and devils. For a good, long while, the three factions were at war with one another. Mainly because of how different we all were, but it was also because we each had different ideas and differing methods about a lot of things. You see, people don't generally like things or people that are different from them. We fallen angels aren't liked by either the devils or the angels, just as the devils aren't liked by either angels or fallen angels, and so on. Sadly, the fallen angels are looked at as abominations. We fell from heaven because of our sins. My sin was lust, for instance, and so I was cast out of heaven and my wings were turned black like this. I used to have such beautiful wings before. Hugging Rainer tight, Naruto offered her a kind-hearted smile and said, I think your wings are beautiful as they are now. They really suit you, Ray-chan. Rainer blushed prettily, but nodded her head in thanks. Thank you, sweetheart. That actually means a lot to me. Leaning in close, she kissed him again before she went back to hugging his head to her chest. As I was saying before, there was a great war between the three factions. At the end of the war, both God and the four Satans were killed. Michael is doing his best to keep heaven from falling apart and trying to keep the humans and other such races from discovering the fact that God is dead. It's a rather well-kept secret, but the truth will get out someday. In the underworld, sighing softly, Rainer looked into her beloved's eyes and said, the underworld went into a civil war between the New Devil faction and the Old Devil faction. The Old Devils were dead set in their ways, while the New Devils wanted to change things for the better and try to make peace between the three factions. I'm assuming the New Devils won? Naruto questioned a little hopefully. Nodding her head in confirmation, Rainer said, yes. There's remnants of the Old Devil faction still around, but they're keeping quiet for the time being. Anyways, a devil by the name of Ajuka Beelzebub, one of the four new Satans, created the evil peace system to help restore the devil's dwindling numbers. Using this system, high-class devils can recruit any other race into their ranks, turning them into devils. Eventually though, people started treating it like a game. Sighing softly, she shook her head and continued with her explanation. Honey, they created a game based on the principles of the board game known as chess. They are called rating games, and in these games, they pit one team of devils, better known as a peerage, against another team peerage. They are made to fight each other while trying to keep the king safe. If your king falls in the battle, it's game over, just like in a game of chess. Anyways, they even started trading pieces between one another in an attempt to either gain favor with a certain someone or to enhance their team's power for the next raiding game. And, despite the fact that the new devil faction wanted to promote peace and prosperity amongst one another, a lot of devils are incredibly manipulative and seek to take whatever they want for themselves. Power is one thing they all seem to lust after. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying all devils are manipulative and evil. Despite what you might think of her right now, Rias is very good to her peerage and is just desperate to get out of her arranged marriage. But, Naruto sighed and said, yeah. She kept my mother from me. I don't know why, but it's going to take a lot for me to ever even consider forgiving her for this. I understand, sweetheart, Rainer said before kissing the top of his head. Anyways, you should know that there's other races out there. One of the most prominent you'll hear about is the yokai faction. They're a varied species, Nekomata, Kitsune, and more. The leader is a Kyuubi named Yasaka. I think you'd like her, actually. Naruto decided to take her word for it. What else is there? He asked curiously. Well, there's Greek gods, Norse gods, stuff like that. Odin and the Valkyries. Thor. Sun Wukong. There's so many different types of people and races out there that it's almost impossible to name all of them. And then you've got the church and their exorcists. And of course there's rogue exorcists as well. Sighing in frustration, Rainer looked into her desired one's eyes and said, you want to stay away from both types, trust me. The light weapons they both use are incredibly dangerous to devils. I don't ever want to see you hurt by them. Okay, Naruto-kun. Naruto nodded and said, thanks for the warning, Ray-chan. But you sound a bit frustrated by something. It's because I am. One of my fellow fallen angels has brought in a number of rogue exorcists for some big plan of his involving this sweet young girl. Her name is Asia Argento, and she was wrongly excommunicated from the church after healing a devil. They didn't take kindly to her healing the enemy of God, and banished her from the church. She has the Twilight Healing, a powerful and rare sacred gear. Anyways, she's so sweet and innocent, and Danasek is planning to kill her so he can take her power for himself. I don't want that for her. Which is why I want your help. Asia's already here in Konoha, in the district with the abandoned church. After they built the new, grander church near the center of the village, they left the other one to decay with the passage of time. My fellow fallen angels have taken up residence in that abandoned church. It's where they plan to perform the ritual to steal Asia's sacred gear. Rainer explained, sounding genuinely worried. Well, that's not good. When are they planning to go through with this? Naruto questioned. In about a week. Danasek still needs time to prepare. Asia's not living in the church, so she isn't with them 24/7. She actually lives in an apartment fairly close to where you currently live. I want you to befriend her and try to talk to her about avoiding the fallen angels. Be honest with her about what you are, what I've told you, and above all else, ensure that she stays safe. I have a few friends that I can work with to try and deal with Danasek, but I might need help. If need be, I'll seek out Rias Grimori and try to enlist the aid of her peerage. I just hope they are in a talking mood if it comes down to that. Naruto nodded in understanding. Before he could say anything, however, somebody else dropped down onto the branch, grinning at the two of them. Hey there, Foxy-kun. I see you've made a new friend. And, she's got wings. Huh, the newcomer said. This woman was named Anko Mitarashi, and, like Naruto, she had a troubled past. They shared something in common that binds them together. They're both outcasts in the village. The teen blonde chuckled a bit and revealed his own, bat-like wings. Hey Anko-chan. I'm glad you're here. This is my new friend, Rainer-chan. Rainer-chan, this is my best friend, Anko-chan. I hope you two get along great. Rainer smiled at the woman and shook her hand in greeting. It's very nice to meet you at last, Anko Mitarashi. You've been good to my darling, so I thank you for that. And because I'm sure you have questions, allow me to explain. And for a while, Reiner explained to Anko everything she had just told Naruto. When she was finished, Reiner asked, "So, what do you think?" Anko simply shrugged and said, "Not bad. I kinda like it. So this peerage thing, can any devil have one of these evil piece sets?" Reiner shook her head and said, "Only high-class devils can receive a set. A low-class devil like Naruto-kun here can raise through the ranks, but it takes a lot of time and effort usually." In that case, when you get your set, Naruto-kun, I want you to turn me. Make me your rook, queen, knight, whatever. I don't care. Just make me like you. Anko said seriously. Naruto blinked a couple of times in shock before asking, "Anko-chan, why would you want something like that?" "So I can be with my Foxy-kun forever, of course. Why else would I want such a thing?" She questioned rhetorically. "If you're going to live for centuries, then I want to be right there with you. You're the most important person in my life, after all." Naruto blushed and said, If that's what you want, then sure. I'd be happy to have you along for the ride." Reiner giggled a bit before saying, "Then I might just have to ask you to turn me as well. Yes, as a fallen angel I can live for a very long time, but I think being bound to you in such a way might be kind of nice. Besides, just imagine the kinky times we could share." Blushing worse, Naruto muttered, "Pervert," under his breath. After a while, he looked at Anko for a moment and asked, "Are they still looking for me?" "Who? Rias and her peerage? Probably. They were searching all over the village for you, last time I checked. Though I think Kushina was taken to meet with the council or something." Still kinda shocked to see her walking around like nothing happened. Reiner frowned and said, "Kushina's probably been called in to speak with the Hyuga clan about what Hiashi tried to do. He had the gall to say that Naruto-kun shouldn't be given his inheritance because he technically died and therefore forfeited his right to his inheritance. I'm glad Kaneko killed him." Naruto blinked a couple of times in shock. "Wait, Kaneko-chan did what?" Anko nodded. "Yeah, she went ballistic on him for that. I've never seen her so pissed off before. I think she's still looking for you, Foxy-kun. Might want to let her know you're okay soon." Naruto frowned and shook his head. "I'm not ready to leave the forest yet. I'd rather stay here until I've calmed down some more. I'm afraid I might blow up at those that care about me if I leave now. I mean, if Rias revived my mother, then the others probably knew about her being in the peerage as well. Not one of them told me the truth. How am I supposed to forgive them for such a thing?" Reiner smiled sadly at him before pulling him in for another kiss. "Nobody's saying you have to forgive them right now. I know I probably wouldn't if I were in your shoes. But I know you care about them, so give it some time and try to work things out when you're ready." "Okay, sweetheart. She's right. I know you care about that Kaneko chick, so you should at least try to work things out with her. But the others, nobody's saying you have to forgive them. Hell, stay mad at them forever. Seems to be working for me when it comes to Orochimaru's pedophilic." Anko joked. Naruto chuckled softly and said, "Thanks Anko-chan, Reiner-chan." "Of course sweetheart. Anytime," Reiner said as she held Naruto close, listening as his breathing slowed and he fell asleep. "My wonderful Naruto-kun, you've got it bad for him, don'tcha?" Anko asked. "Can't say I blame you. He's a sweetheart." Reiner giggled a bit and said, "He really is. I love him. I only want to be with him. I just wish I could have been there for him sooner. He's suffered far too much as it is." "Agreed," Anko said before she took a seat with her back against the tree. "Let's let him sleep for the time being. If anyone comes in here looking for him, we'll deal with it then. For now, we'll just relax." "Sounds like a good idea to me," Reiner said as she just continued to stroke Naruto's hair while humming softly to him. "I love you Naru-kun. Now and forever. Kushina." Kushina scowled as she listened to the Hyuga clan elders call for Kaneko's death for what she had done. They had been ranting on for a while now about the injustice done to their clan, what needed to happen now, and even bringing up the possibility of branding both of Hiyashi's daughters with the Hyuga clan's curse seal while they put someone more worthy and capable of leading the clan in charge. Finally having enough of their shit, Kushina unleashed her massive killing intent upon them and shouted, "Enough already. I don't have time for your bullshit." Glaring heatedly at them, her hair had begun waving around like the 9 tails of the Kyuubi. "That asshole was trying to take away my son's inheritance that Minato and I left for him. He was interfering in another clan's affairs. Kaneko-chan was well within her right to punish him how she saw fit. And if you even think about branding his daughters with that blasted seal you assholes are so fond of, I won't hesitate to kill each and every one of you. Then, once I'm done, I'll personally pick someone to be your new clan head, someone that won't be such an asshole. And then, just for good measure, I'll pay a visit to your families." I think you get the picture by now. When Kushina let up on the killing intent, one of the elders, Hiyashi's father, glared at her and exclaimed, "Your son is nothing more than an abomination. A blight upon this village." And he should've. The man never got to finish, as he felt something impact his chest hard. Looking down, his eyes widened in horror as he stared at the burning hole through his chest. When the man fell to the ground dead moments later, Kushina simply smiled evilly at the others. "I suggest you all learn from his mistake. I'm not taking any more shit from any of you. You, the people of the village, Hiruzen, Rias, I'm done playing nice with all of you goddammit." The entire time this was going on, Hinata and Hanabi could only stare on in horror. They knew that if their father ever died, the elders would make their lives a living hell. Their father may have protected them for a time, putting off the decision to brand one of his daughters for as long as he could. But even then, he wasn't the nicest man in the world. But to think he'd try and steal from another clan. But the scary thing was watching Kushina unleash her anger upon the other Hyugas in the room. She was terrifying. Rias placed a gentle hand upon their shoulders, smiling reassuringly at them. "It'll be okay. If they try to brand you with the curse seal, I might be able to help you girls out. Nobody deserves to suffer that kind of fate." Hanabi looked up into Rias' eyes and asked, "What do you mean? How could you help us?" "I can't say right now. Just know that if things ever get too bad, I can and will take you into my home. You deserve to be happy and not have to rot away in a toxic environment like that," the redhead said with a kind smile on her face. Hinata frowned and asked, "There's a catch though, isn't there?" "Clever. Yes, but it's nothing terrible. It will be explained to you if you ever need a home away from your toxic home environment," Rias said, not willing to delve too deep into the subject. After all, she still had to deal with her blonde-haired rook. If she could find him. Their attention was drawn back to the argument between Kushina and the elders again when she zipped across the room and tightened her hand around one of the elders' throat. "You fools just don't give up, do you? I will not hesitate to kill each and every one of you if that is what it takes. What part of that do you idiots not understand?" Hiruzen sighed and said, "Kushina, that's enough. I'm sure." Turning towards Hiruzen, Kushina leveled such a glare on him that it froze him in place, unable to utter another word. It was at this point that the man she was choking was erased, catching her off guard. When they turned their gaze to Rias, the red-headed devil said, "He was preparing to attack you. I refuse to let anyone harm my adorable family." Hearing this, Kushina turned her glare on the other elders and screamed out, "That's it, goddammit." The others watched in a mixture of horror and fascination as Kushina slaughtered the other Hyuga elders without a care. Once the last one was dead, Kushina turned to Hiruzen and asked sweetly, "What was it you were about to say?" They get the picture. Obviously they didn't. Now, I suggest you do what you can to make the rest of the Hyuga clan understand not to fuck with me and my child. Appoint someone as temporary clan head until Hinata-chan is ready to lead her clan. If anyone has a problem with it, they can kiss my. Now, if that's all, I'm going to try and find my son. You interrupted me in my search. Nobody tried to stop her as Kushina left the room, her hair still flailing about, signifying that she was still rather furious. Once she was gone, Rias looked into the Hokage's eyes and said, "We need to figure out what to do about Naruto-kun. I don't want him to stay mad at me forever." Hiruzen sighed and said, "We've burned that bridge already, Rias. Hiding everything from him like we did, and keeping Kushina from raising her son, we've screwed up big time. We should have just come forth ages ago, before he died. Maybe we could have prepared him better for everything. I don't know." Rias frowned and shook her head sadly. "I listened to you, Hiruzen Sarutobi. I did as you asked of me, and now Naruto-kun hates me. If he never forgives me." Glaring into his eyes, Rias flared her power for a moment before saying, "If I can't somehow mend my relationship with him, you will pay. I won't kill you, but you'll wish I did." And with that, Rias turned and made her way out of the room. Once they were alone with the Hokage, Hinata and Hanabi looked into his eyes and asked, "What happened to Naruto-kun?" "I can't tell you that," Hiruzen said somewhat dismissively. "He had a big enough headache and he didn't need to deal with anything more." "Why not? You just insinuated that Naruto-kun died. I think as someone that cares for him that I deserve to know what the hell happened." Hinata exclaimed angrily. "You don't need to know," Hiruzen said sternly before he left the room. Once he was gone, Hanabi looked into her sister's eyes and said, "We need to find Naruto-kun." And with that, the Hyuga sisters hurried off to try and find Naruto. Forest of Death. Hours later. Rainer scowled as a certain kitty landed on the branch a short distance away from them. "Are you here to hurt him again?" the fallen angel asked somewhat bitterly. Kaneko glared hard at the black-winged woman and said, "What do you want with Naruto-kun?" The beautiful raven-haired woman sighed and said, "Like you, I'm in love with him. Besides, his father wanted me to watch over him. If he hadn't grown so close to you and the others, I would have shown up much earlier in his life. Besides that, I need his help." Kaneko listened patiently as the fallen angel explained everything to her about Asia and Danesik. How she informed Naruto about everything she could before he fell asleep in her arms. Kaneko was worried that she might have twisted the truth a bit, but Anko shook her head and assured her that Rainer was pretty honest with him about everything, as far as she could tell. With a sigh, the Nekosho looked deep into Rainer's eyes and said, "Thank you for looking out for him. I mean, how does he feel about you?" "He's upset that you hid his mother from him like that, but I don't think he'll stay mad at you for long," Rainer said, a smile on her face. Now Rias, on the other hand, she won't be forgiven so easily, I'm sure. The white-haired loli nodded in understanding. "Of course," she said before she walked up to them and began gently petting Naruto's hair. She didn't speak a word and simply sat down beside Anko, continuing to pet Naruto's hair. After a while, she said, "Soft." Rainer giggled and said, "I know. It's not what you'd expect. It's really nice though." Anko looked into Kaneko's eyes at this point and asked, "Anyone else still looking for him?" "I think he'd like to avoid Kushina and the others for a while." Kaneko frowned and stopped petting her boyfriend. "Kushina won't stop. Kiba and the others are trying too." "I see," Rainer mumbled. "What do we do then? If he returns to his apartment, they'll find him there eventually." Anko sighed and scratched her head for a moment. "I don't mind letting him stay with me for a while. I'd prefer he be given his inheritance though, but that would require dealing with Hokage-sama. I don't know if he's ready to face the old bastard yet." "I'd like my inheritance," Naruto said, slowly sitting up as he came to. "If it means confronting that bastard, I'll do it. But he'd better not try the whole grandfather act with me. I was stupid to trust him." Kaneko looked worried as she looked at her boyfriend. When he turned to her, she flinched away and looked down at her lap. The loli was shocked when he suddenly pulled her into a hug and began to stroke her hair. Purring lightly, she nestled against him and whispered, "Love you." Naruto smiled at her and said, "I can't stay mad at you, Neko-chan. Rias and the Hokage though are on my shit list. I don't know how to feel about the others." And I don't want anything to do with that woman right now. Anko sighed and rubbed the back of her head. Kushina's your mom, but I agree, she has no right trying to enter your life now of all times when she should have been there for you. But I do know one thing. She's stubborn as hell. She'll keep trying to find you so she can at least talk to you. There's no way to avoid her forever. Naruto sighed and looked at Kaneko. Why was she kept from me? Whose idea was it? Kaneko frowned and said, it was a deal between Hiruzen Sarutobi and Rias Grimori. Hiruzen convinced Rias that they needed to keep Kushina safe from the likes of Danzo until she was back at full strength. However, once Kushina had recovered and started getting the hang of her new powers, she demanded to meet you and be in your life. This happened shortly after you turned 6. Hiruzen convinced her that it wasn't the right time, that you weren't ready to meet her yet. That you weren't ready to receive your inheritance or anything. Rias tried to argue in your favor, but the old man put his foot down and made it clear that you needed to mature. I think he wanted to ensure you were loyal to the village and to him before he'd allow Kushina to meet you. Naruto clenched his fists again and scowled as he glared at nothing. And Rias? Kaneko sighed and said, Rias convinced Kushina it was for the best. That going against the Hokage's wishes wouldn't be a good idea. So she helped to keep Kushina hidden away. Though she wasn't happy with Hiruzen's decision, or the fact he was subtly manipulating you. Still, the blonde nodded and said, she lied to me. Instead of disobeying the Hokage's orders, she chose to hide the truth from me. She helped the Hokage manipulate me growing up. Yes, she did, Kaneko said sadly. But Rias does care about you, Naruto-kun. I know. If she didn't, she'd have left me dead on the bridge. That doesn't mean I can just forgive her though. Naruto said. Before anyone could say anything more, a familiar redhead made herself known to them. I know you don't want to see me right now, but I need to explain my absence in your life, she said sadly. Naruto, my sweet child, when they wouldn't let me meet you, I watched you from the shadows. I did what I could to protect you from the villagers without ever making myself known to you. When Hiruzen let them off with a slap on the wrist, I moved in and struck each of them down without a trace of my involvement being left behind. That stranger that would often point out places for you to hide and misdirected the mobs. Naruto stared into his mother's eyes as she sat down in front of him. Realizing what she was saying, Naruto's eyes widened as he asked, that was you? Kushina smiled and nodded her head, tears trickling down her cheeks. I couldn't reveal myself to you, so I found other ways to be near you for even tiny moments like that. I tried to protect you. And when I wasn't around, I was keeping tabs on goings-on in the underworld and throughout the elemental nations. I've collected so much blackmail material you could write at least a dozen books full of such information. You wouldn't believe just how much Danzo Tem's been up to behind everyone's backs. Naruto scowled and said, why didn't you disobey their orders? You should have raised me. The redhead sighed and closed her eyes. If a devil disobeys their master and goes rogue like that, we could be labeled as a stray devil with orders being given to eliminate us. It doesn't help that some turn into grotesque monsters after being labeled a stray. If their desires are strong enough, then they have the potential to turn into monsters like that. So as much as I wanted to just take you in my arms and run away with you, I couldn't. But I shouldn't have listened to them. I should have disobeyed. I'm strong enough that I could have run away with you and raised you right. I think I was afraid that you might hate me or something. I see. Sighing, Naruto looked into his mother's eyes and said, I can't blame you then. At least, not entirely. Hiruzen and Rias though are another matter entirely. Rias could have very easily ignored the Hokage's orders and allowed you to be in my life. But she chose to do nothing and to keep you hidden from me. Rias may be our master, but she's officially on my shit list. Same with that old bastard. I doubt I will ever forgive either of them. And that's fair. They were in the wrong. I want to be in your life from now on, Naruto-kun. Kushina pleaded. Naruto shook his head and said, I don't need a mother in my life anymore. That ship has sailed. But if you wanted to get to know each other as friends. Kushina smiled at him and said, that works for me. I swear, I'll never leave your side again. Naruto sighed softly and said, thanks. Looking into her eyes, he extended his hand to her for a handshake. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. It's nice to finally meet you. Shaking his hand, Kushina said, I'm Kushina Uzumaki. I'm Ryusuke Mori's bishop and it's wonderful to finally meet you, Naruto-kun. And Kaneko-chan and I are her rooks. Though right now, I'm not sure if I want anything to do with her. I did make a promise to her though, and I intend to keep it. But after that, I don't think I want to have any contact with her at all. This isn't something that can be so easily forgiven. Naruto said, sounding dejected. Kushina simply squeezed Naruto's hand gently and said, then we'll move into my old home. You and me. I know you aren't too fond of me right now, but we'll be safe there. Nobody can enter our home unless we let them in. Which means nobody can harass you there. I'll even train you in everything I can think of, even some of the magic spells I've come up with. I think you'd get a real kick out of seeing some of them. The redhead giggled a bit before she surprised Naruto by wrapping him up in a tight hug. I'm so sorry Naruto-kun. For everything. Naruto flinched at the contact. His first instinct was to push her away and tell her not to touch him, but he ignored that. Instead, he slowly wrapped his arms around Kushina and hugged her back tentatively at first. It's not entirely your fault, Kushina. And that sounds wonderful. Thank you. Kushina smiled at him and leaned back to look him over. You're so handsome. Your dad would be so proud of you. Anyways, I've got your inheritance with me, if you want to head home and check it out. You girls are welcome to come too, if you want. Anko shook her head and said, nah. I've got some things to take care of. I'll see you later, Foxy-kun. Leaning in close, she kissed Naruto on the cheek before turning and leaving the area. Naruto blushed a bit and shook his head. My life was never meant to be normal, I swear. He said with a chuckle. Come on girls, let's go home. I want to see what my new home is like. Kaneko and Rainer smiled at him and spread their wings, flying away with Naruto and Kushina back towards the village. As rough as this had all been for him, they knew Naruto would be okay. They just hoped Rias and the Hokage would get the message to leave him the hell alone, at least for the time being. Rainer, on the other hand, kept an eye on Naruto and thought about the request she had made of him earlier. Just hang in there, Asia-chan, Naruto-kun will save you. I know he will. Upon reaching the village proper once again, the group of four landed and hid their wings once more so as not to attract too much attention. As they walked along, however, they couldn't help but notice the glares sent Naruto's way. It didn't help that they were whispering horrible things about him to one another. Without warning, Kushina flared her power and smiled sweetly at the citizens in the immediate area. I suggest you stop what you're doing right now. Naruto-kun's been through quite enough thanks to you people, so if you know what's good for you, you'll shut the hell up and start treating him with some respect. Am I understood? She asked, her hair flailing in the shape of 9 tails. One of the civilians scoffed as he looked at her unafraid. The fool didn't realize the danger he was in. And what are you going to do about it? You're just one of the demon's whores. Anyone willing to spend time with him is just another abomination in our eyes. He said, waving his hand dismissively at her. You all probably spread your legs for the demon and willingly accept his seed. It's such a shame too, you're quite the looker. Without a word, Kushina stepped up to the man, a sweet smile on her face. Then, before he could react, she grabbed his head and proceeded to snap his neck. Watching his body collapse to the ground, she looked at the other civilians and asked, anyone else have something smart to say? Needless to say, everyone in the immediate vicinity ran away in a panic, screaming about homicidal abominations and the demon's whores. Afterwards, Kushina walked back over to Naruto and gently took his hand in hers. Come Naruto-kun, let's get you home. Naruto just nodded dumbly as he followed along. She's certainly interesting. When they reached the gate barring entrance into the Uzumaki compound, they saw Akino and Gasper waiting for them. Smiling kindly at Naruto, Akino said, I figured I would wait here for you, Naruto-kun. I knew you'd eventually come here once Kushina-chan found you. Naruto frowned deeply as he looked at Akino. Gasper he had no problem with, but Akino was Rias' queen and probably knew quite a bit about Rias' dealings with the third Hokage. He wasn't sure if he could place any amount of trust in her if she played any part in what they had done. Still, he wondered if he could get some answers out of her. What do you want, Akino? I assume you were searching for me for some reason. Naruto questioned grumpily. Akino frowned sadly and said, we need to talk. It's about Rias. Naruto sighed and simply walked up to the gate. Kushina, is this a blood seal, by any chance? The redhead nodded as she walked up next to Naruto and proceeded to prick her finger, drawing a bit of blood in the process. Smearing it across the seal on the gate, she pushed it open and walked inside with the others following her. Once the gate had closed and the seal activated once again, she led them into the house and proceeded to take a seat on the love seat. All right, Akino, tell us what you need to say. Akino sighed and found that she couldn't look Naruto or his mother in the eyes. You need to know the truth about the deal Rias struck with Hiruzen Sarutobi. Kushina scowled at this and asked, what else is there? They conspired together to ensure I couldn't be there to raise my son. They ruined any chance we had of being a real family. The sadomasochist looked sadly into Naruto's eyes and began to explain. When we first came to this village during the fourth's reign, he agreed to give us shelter and made sure we were protected. We had finally found a place where Riser couldn't find us. Later on, we made contact with Sona Citri and invited her to come stay here as well. However, when the fourth died and Hiruzen took over again, things changed. Naruto frowned and asked, in what way? Sounds to me like I won't like the answer. Akino nodded and looked into her crush's eyes. Minato had left notes, detailing what we had told him about what we are, the various factions, all of it. He left specific instructions on how to treat us and what he'd like his successor to do in the event of his passing. Unfortunately, Hiruzen decided to deviate from Minato's plans for us. He contacted Rias and she and I went to speak with him. Hiruzen wanted to control us. The old bastard threatened to reveal our location to Riser and Rias' father, one Zeodicus Grimori. Apparently, Riser had come looking for Rias-sama and Hiruzen decided to blackmail Rias-sama in exchange for her continued loyalty. Sighing sadly, Akino looked down at her lap and said, the bastard twisted Rias' arm, giving her no real choice if she wanted to remain safely in the village. He decided to use us and made us his elite enforcers. Then, when he learned that Kushina-chan was alive and one of us, he enforced his will upon us once more and promised that he would reveal our location to Riser if we didn't keep Kushina-chan from you, Naruto-kun. By that point, Rias had already grown fond of you and wanted to help you in any way she could, but her hands were tied. It was either do as he said or we'd be given to Riser to do with as the bastard pleased. Kushina scowled and growled out, that rotten son of a bitch. How dare he do such a terrible thing? He deserves to die for his crimes. Naruto frowned and shook his head. If we kill him, there's no one to really take his place besides that Danzo creep. Kaneko shook her head and said, Danzo's dead. The blonde blinked in shock before saying, then there really is nobody to take his place. Sadly, until a suitable replacement can be found, we're stuck with him as the Hokage. Kushina scowled at this, clenching her fists angrily. If Hiruzen dies, chances are Jiraiya would take his place. That man cannot be trusted. He's fiercely loyal to the third Hokage. And he's obsessed with some prophecy he was told years ago. Chances are, he'll try to use you, Naruto-kun. No, our best bet would be to bring Tsunade back to the village so she can take over as the fifth Hokage. But she could be anywhere at this point. And she holds no love for the village after everything she's lost. Naruto frowned and said, then we'll just have to convince her to become Hokage. She needs to get over her losses, get over herself, and understand that plenty of people suffer just like she has. Let me guess, next thing you're going to tell me is she's homophobic or something. Seeing the look his mother was giving him, the blonde deadpanned and said, you have got to be kidding me. The redhead sighed and nodded her head. Yeah, Tsunade's got problems. Can't deny that, but I'm sure we can help her overcome her problems and take up the mantle of Hokage if need be. For now, we'll just have to deal with Sarutobi and try to counter him when we can. I refuse to let him manipulate you anymore. Thanks. Naruto said. If Hiruzen passes away, what are the chances that Jiraiya will claim the seat for himself before we can recruit Tsunade? Kushina smirked and shook her head. I wouldn't bet on it. Jiraiya would rather enjoy his vices and would sooner pass the position on to someone else. You see, Jiraiya is a massive pervert. He makes his living writing smut books. All his books is no plot, terrible character design, cuckolding, the works. And the inspiration he gets comes from peeping on women in their most private of moments. They can be relaxing in the hot spring or they could be having with their loved one. He uses a jutsu that makes him pretty much invisible to the eye to do all his peeping. He's a rotten scumbag. Kaneko scowled and said, enemy of women. Rainer frowned deeply and said, if he comes anywhere near me and my darling Naruto-kun, I'll castrate the son of a bitch. Kushina smirked and said, let me help. It sounds fun. Why Minato ever trusted him to be a good godfather for his son eludes me. Damn naive fool. Naruto sighed and massaged his forehead tiredly. My father was an idiot, wasn't he? Kushina shook her head and said, no. He was actually a really intelligent man and a very skilled shinobi. Minato was just extremely naive and trusted the wrong people. Gasper, who had remained quiet all this time, looked at Naruto and asked, nay, Naruto. Are you still mad at Rias? Naruto sighed and closed his eyes as he thought over how he should respond to Gasper's question. After a while, he said, despite her reasons for going along with it, she hid my mother from me. Besides that, I get the feeling that there's more to the story that I don't know. If she wants my forgiveness, she's going to have to work for it. For now, I want nothing to do with her. And before you ask, I made a promise. I'll save her from Riser. But otherwise, she'd better leave me alone. Akino frowned sadly, but nodded her head in understanding. All right, Naruto-kun. I'll be sure to inform her of your decision. Hopefully she'll give you space and let you be. Though, there's one thing we'd like to do for you and Haku. Gasper, seeing where she was going with this, smiled brightly and said, a familiar. Right. Naruto blinked and asked, what's a familiar? Rather than answer, Kushina and Akino summoned their familiars to their sides. Kushina's familiar was some kind of bird Naruto was unfamiliar with. It was an orange-reddish color and was rather large as well. Meanwhile, Akino's familiars were a bunch of creatures he could only identify as imps. Blinking a couple of times, he asked, what exactly are those things? Kushina smiled and said, this is a phoenix. His name is Blaze. I would have named him Menma, but he didn't like any of the names I picked out for him. So we went with Blaze. Shrugging her shoulders, she petted Blaze gently and smiled at her son. He's really sweet if you want to hold him. Akino simply smiled at her love interest and said, these are my little friends. They're small onus commonly known as imps. Kaneko-chan has a cute little kitten, which is appropriate. Kaneko grumbled irritably at Akino's comment. She didn't say anything though. Instead, she listened as Akino began explaining to her beloved all about familiars. Naruto-kun, we devils make pacts with creatures that we call familiars. We befriend them, and in turn they do a variety of things for us. One common usage is having them deliver flyers for us. I'll explain those in a minute. But really, familiars can do a wide variety of things. Some can aid you in combat, others will help with chores, such as cleaning around the house. Some are meant purely for camaraderie and friendship. A lot of familiars even have the ability to take on the appearance of a human and can even talk. Kushina took over at this point. The flyers Akino mentioned are given to people so they can summon wee devils to help them with a variety of things. It used to be that they could call devils for pleasures of the flesh or to exact revenge upon someone for them. However, things have changed and we will no longer accept requests like that. I don't know about you, but I'd rather not have with complete strangers. Naruto blushed a bit at the images running through his head after hearing that. Shaking it off, he asked, "So what kinds of requests do you typically receive?" Akino shrugged and said, "It varies depending on the customer. Some just want somebody to talk to about how their day went or to vent to somebody all their frustrations and woes. Others will ask devils to model for them while they draw them. And, in case you're wondering, we accept payment in a variety of ways. Money, priceless artifacts, useful items, whatever really. It used to be that devils would take their souls, but we don't do that anymore." Kushina smirked at this point and said, "Then there's people like Jiraiya. He's been blacklisted because he kept trying to pressure female devils into thinking they had to obey his every whim, simply because he summoned them. That man, Gato, he was blacklisted as well. You get all sorts of people, really. I see. Is there some kind of point to doing this, or is it simply for fun?" Naruto questioned. While it sounded interesting, he just didn't see the point in doing this at all. Well, the more requests you complete, the more your power grows. Complete enough requests and prove yourself and you can advance in rank to mid-class devil and eventually high-class devil, if you work hard enough. Akino explained. Huh, I guess that's a good payoff. I wonder what type of requests I'd be asked to fulfill. Naruto wondered. Akino licked her lips as she looked at Naruto. Well, I know what I'd request. I'd have you model for me so I could paint a wonderful little picture of you. Naruto blushed badly and quickly shook his head. I don't know if I could do something like that. Kushina found herself giggling as she said, "She has a point though. You're handsome, and you're powerful too. You're bound to attract a lot of women." Kaneko sighed and nodded her head. Yes, a harem is a distinct possibility, sadly. Blushing slightly worse, Naruto scratched at the tip of his nose and said, "I wasn't even thinking about that kind of thing. I mean, girls never really took an interest in me until now. And, I suppose I'm in that kind of situation now, considering I'm dating you and Haku-chan and Rainer-chan has come into my life. Speaking of, why exactly is a fallen angel here?" Akino questioned, narrowing her eyes at Rainer. She wasn't fond of fallen angels, despite being half fallen angel herself. Though that's a story for another time. Rainer sighed and explained the situation to Akino and whoever else didn't know the story just yet. Once she was finished, Akino sighed and said, "I see. I suppose I'll trust you, for now at least. If you genuinely love Naruto-kun, and you seriously want to help this Asia Argento girl, I'll help. I'll try to convince Rias to lend her assistance as well. I can make no guarantees however. But, looking at Naruto, the half-devil smiled sadly at him and said, I'll never abandon my adorable Naruto-kun. If he's planning to help you, then you have my support." The beautiful fallen angel smiled happily and said, "Thank you so much. You have no idea what that means to me. I want to save that poor, sweet girl before anything can happen to her. My friends and I will try to deal with Danasek and the rogue exorcists, but..." Naruto shook his head and said, "I don't care how dangerous it is, I'm not letting you and your friends fight them alone. I'll be coming with you to deal with that problem." Kaneko scowled at this and said, "Light weapons can kill you. You'd be at a disadvantage." The blonde shrugged and said, "Then I'll just have to be careful. I'm not going to run away at the first sign of trouble, and I'm not about to abandon a friend in need. First thing I need to do is get in touch with Asia and try to convince her to avoid Danasek and the others. Shouldn't be too difficult." Rainer sighed and shook her head. "I don't know about that. Asia is a sweet, naive young thing. She's very trusting, and she's kind to everyone. She might try to defend Danesik and whoever else has gotten in touch with her. I'm worried about what they'll do to her if given the chance. I'm especially worried about what that freed person will do if given the opportunity. He's pretty much as evil a person as you can get. He's a rogue exorcist that relishes in causing other people pain, and he's not above raping a beautiful young thing like Asia. So if you're going to save her, you'd best do it quickly. Naruto and the others scowled at this piece of information. Standing up, Naruto looked at Rainer and said, "Show me where she lives. I want to get to know her immediately and try to figure out a way to protect her. I refuse to let anyone harm someone that pure." Akino nodded in agreement before she stood up as well. "I'll go inform Rias and the others of the situation. She may be upset at first, but I'll try to smooth things over for you. Just be careful, Naruto-kun," she said, moving up close to Naruto and kissing his cheek. Afterwards, she left his new home. Naruto blushed a bit, but quickly shook it off. Looking at Kaneko and then at Kushina, he asked, "What are you two going to do?" Kaneko smiled slightly and said, "Coming with you." Kushina sighed and said, "I'd come with you, but I need to take inventory and see if there's anything missing. I highly doubt it, but it's better to be safe than sorry. I also need to go grocery shopping, as I'm sure the food we had stocked has all gone bad by now. Chances are, I'll have to do some cleaning as well." "Busy bee." Nodding in understanding, Naruto said, "Busy indeed. All right, let's get going, girls." And with that, he left the house with Rainer and Kaneko to look for Asia. Once they were gone, Kushina frowned and said to herself, "Akino's definitely hiding something about that deal Rias made with Hiruzen. She knows the full truth, I'm sure of it. Just what could they be hiding though, I wonder?" Rias sighed heavily as she curled up on her bed. She was miserable right now, and the reason laid with her second rook, Naruto Uzumaki. She didn't know when, but she had slowly found herself falling in love with the young man. Yes, she was older than him by quite a few years, but love knows no bounds, as far as she was concerned. The redhead knew Naruto would be mad at her when he learned the truth about his mother. But she was hiding a secret far worse than that, and she knew that if Naruto ever learned the full truth, he might never forgive her. Sadly, she had the feeling that Hiruzen would make his move sometime soon to truly sever the bond between Rias and Naruto. If only she knew what he had planned, she was confident she'd be able to formulate a plan to put a stop to his machinations somehow. The more she thought about Naruto, the more her chest constricted and hurt. She couldn't help but shed a few tears and mutter out, "Please don't leave me." It was at this point that Akino stepped into the room and said, "Rias, we have a problem." Turning to face her queen, Rias saw the serious look in her eyes and frowned deeply. Sitting up, she wiped away her tears and asked, "What's the problem, Akino? Please don't tell me something's happened to Naruto-kun." Akino frowned and said, "It pertains to Naruto-kun, yes." Seeing the look of worry on Ria's face, the hybrid decided to try and assuage her worries somewhat. "No, he's not hurt. At least not yet." Rias scowled and asked, "What do you mean, not yet? Has something happened to put my cute rook in danger?" "In a manner of speaking. Yes. Were you aware that fallen angels had moved into the abandoned church near Naruto's old apartment?" Akino questioned, a deep frown on her face. Eyes widening in horror, Rias shouted, "What? Don't tell me." Akino shook her head and said, "No, they haven't hurt him yet. A fallen angel by the name of Rainer found Naruto-kun before we could. She told him damn near everything you were waiting to tell him until we got home. About the various factions, the wars, him being dead, etc. Naruto-kun wasn't happy about having to learn all of that from someone that wasn't you, Rias-sama. But that's not the problem." Sighing softly, Akino took a seat beside Rias and continued, "Minato asked Rainer to watch over Naruto-kun if something happened to him. Rainer, at least, has been around in Konoha for at least as long as we have been, perhaps even longer. She's fallen in love with Naruto-kun as well. Rias growled and exclaimed, but he's mine. I won't let her just have him without a fight. Akino giggled a bit and said, Naruto-kun's going to have a harem, you know that as well as I do. Regardless, that's not the main problem we're now faced with. You see, a fallen angel by the name of Danasik has secured a girl by the name of Asia Argento and brought her here to Konoha. Asia has the twilight healing as well, just like Haku. Danasik wants that power for himself and is going to kill Asia to get it. Rainer has asked that Naruto save her from such a fate. The big problem comes from the fact that rogue exorcists, including a man named Freed, have joined the fallen angels. If Naruto-kun tries to help Asia, how dare she put my sweet rook in such danger? What the hell is she thinking? Rias exclaimed angrily. Hasn't he been warned that light weapons can hurt him? Potentially kill him? And does he know yet that holy ground will weaken him? He doesn't realize the kind of danger he's in by agreeing to do this. Then we should have been more honest with him from the start. Yes, Wave might not have been the ideal place to discuss everything, but we should have told him something, Rias. He doesn't trust us now because we kept everything from him. Rias, we need to help him before he gets himself killed. And if that means working with that fallen angel and her friends, I'll put aside my differences and do it. What about you? Akino questioned. Rias didn't even need time to think on it. Of course we're going to help him. I refuse to watch Naruto-kun die again. Get Kiba and the others. We're going to exterminate those wretched rogues and keep Naruto-kun safe. Akino smiled at her dearest friend and nodded. Leaving the room to go and fetch the others as she had been instructed, the hybrid smiled and said to herself, you will be safe, Naruto-kun. Let your lovely Akino-chan do all the dirty work for you. Hiruzen. The third Hokage scowled as he went through his paperwork. He was barely focused on it, idly reading through everything and either approving or disapproving of a variety of things and filing things as needed. No, his mind was more focused on one particular subject, Naruto Uzumaki. That stupid Uchiha just had to ruin our weapon. It's going to take a bit of work, but I can't have other villages learning that our Jinchuriki isn't a Jinchuriki any longer. If Danzo were still alive, I could have made use of him. Could have told him to bring me the Jinchuriki from Taki, that Fu girl. But no, he had to be a blasted fool and enrage Rias. That's another problem, those damn devils. If she had simply cooperated from the start and not tried to twist my arm, I could have been rid of her ages ago. I could make use of him, I suppose. Riser Phoenix. Hiruzen scowled and put down his pen. Massaging the bridge of his nose, he opened his eyes when he sensed a strange power spring up in his office. Quickly dismissing his Anbu, he watched as a tall, blond man with an arrogant smirk on his face appeared. Narrowing his eyes at him, Hiruzen asked, why are you here, Riser? I'm getting tired of waiting, old man. Bring Rias before me so I can take her away from this cesspit you call a village. Riser demanded. Scowling at the Phoenix, Hiruzen shook his head and said, not yet. You need to learn some patience. Just wait a bit longer and you'll get everything you wanted and then some. Riser scowled and shouted, I'm tired of being patient, old fool. She is mine. I refuse to let any pathetic human from your village lay a finger on her. I won't have my bride sullied before I can break her in. Don't forget Phoenix, I can and will break you. You may be a devil, and you may be strong, but you forget that, for as strong as you are, I'm your better. You'd be wise not to question me, little boy. Now, when I tell you to be fucking patient, you will be patient. Is that understood? Hiruzen exclaimed, flaring his power to get his point across to the arrogant devil. The womanizer scowled, but reluctantly nodded his head. Fine. When will you be ready to hand her over to me? Soon. Hiruzen said and rested his chin atop his steepled hands. Your time to strike will be during the Chunin exams coming up in a couple of months. Her new rook and pawn will be participating in the exams. Once they're busy, I'll notify you of where Rias is hiding. Go there and take the bitch. Do whatever you want with her. I couldn't care less. And if you absolutely must challenge her to a rating game, as you people call it, then make sure to wait for the day of the final matches. I have a strong feeling Naruto-kun and Haku-chan will be making it through to the finals. By waiting until then, you ensure that two of her most valuable pieces will be unavailable to assist her. Your victory over her will be all but assured at that point. If you screw up the timing, I'll fry you like the roasted chicken you are. Do I make myself clear, boy? Bristling at the insult, Riser wanted to lash out against Hiruzen, but he knew that such a fight wouldn't go his way. Maybe if he had brought his peerage with him, he could use them to wear the old bastard down enough to actually kill him, but he hadn't exactly thought this plan through very well. No, for now he'd have to play by Sarutobi's rules. Fine. Just make sure nobody touches her. I want her to stay pure for me so I can crush her heart, mind, body, and spirit. She'll be my greatest trophy. Hiruzen simply waved him off and said, I wouldn't worry too much about it. She's only interested in her new rook, Naruto Uzumaki. And I've already made sure that their relationship's been damaged to the point he no longer trusts her. Of course, it was a double-edged sword strike, so to speak, considering he no longer trusts me either. Either way, with their relationship damaged to such an extent, it will be all too easy for me to sever that bond completely. Trust me, when I'm done, Naruto won't even attempt to come to her rescue. Your victory will be all but assured, I guarantee it. Riser chuckled and said, I swear, you're eviler than I am. As much as I dislike your kind, you've proven to be a valuable ally to have. Once Rias and I are out of your hair, I hope you take real good care of that rook of hers. Why do you even keep something like that around, anyways? The Hokage shrugged and said, he was useful for a time, but his usefulness has come to an end now that that foolish Uchiha broke my weapon. Once Rias has been successfully cowed and Kushina has been dealt with, I'll rid myself of that boy. Hell, I might even be labeled a hero for killing the Kyuubi brat. My legacy would live on forever in that case. I see. You've really thought all of this through. Tell me though, why did you let Rias get so close to your weapon? Riser questioned curiously. It was an arrangement made between us in exchange for keeping the boy's mother from him. I hadn't expected to lose the Kyuubi as a result, however. A miscalculation on my part. Regardless, what's done is done. For now, all you need to do is be patient for a while longer. You'll get what's coming to you, and I'll finally be rid of one more nuisance plaguing my village. It's a win-win for the both of us. Hiruzen stated. Afterwards, the two men chuckled evilly for a time before going their separate ways. Naruto. Naruto smiled sadly as he watched the beautiful young woman known as Asia Argento. She was truly as beautiful as he had imagined, both inside and out. She was currently going out of her way to tend to a wounded child who had been injured while playing with his friends. She really is a sweetheart, isn't she? Naruto questioned nobody. Rainer smiled and said, she's a good person. I'm sure she'll love getting to know you, Naruto-kun. Why don't you go talk to her? The whiskered blonde frowned and said, I don't know what I'd say to her. I have no idea how I'm even supposed to keep her safe. Kaneko grabbed Naruto's hand and walked with him up to the girl. Talk. She commanded. Naruto's sweat dropped before turning to smile at Asia. When the girl turned to face him, Naruto said, Hi there Asia-chan. The name's Naruto Uzumaki. Can we talk for a while? I know a place that serves some good food, if you want to get something to eat with me. Asia blinked in shock at the name and looked a bit worried. Naruto Uzumaki? She asked. When he nodded in confirmation, she went, Eep. And bowed to him. I'm sorry Mr. Demon sir, I didn't mean to offend you in any way. Kaneko scowled at the girl while Naruto just looked perplexed. Then, realizing what was going on, he sighed and facepalmed hard. Dragging his hand down his face, he said, You've been talking to the villagers too much. Let me guess, they warned you to stay away from me because I'm an evil demon, didn't they? And because you heard it so often, you just assumed they were right. Am I right? The cute blonde looked into his eyes and nodded a few times. Yes. But, looking him over, she frowned and said, you don't look anything like what they described. Sighing again, Naruto took Asia by the hand and began walking with her towards Ramen Ichiraku. I'll explain everything in a bit. Let's get some food in our bellies while we talk. Okay. Asia smiled brightly and nodded her head in acceptance. Of course, Uzumaki-san. Oh, is it okay to call you that? Naruto chuckled softly as he entered the ramen stand with the adorable healer. Gently pushing her into a seat, he sat beside her and said, you can call me Naruto, if you'd like. So long as you don't mind me calling you Asia-chan. Asia blushed a bit and said, that's fine, Naruto-san. What is this place? It smells lovely. The whiskered teen quirked a brow at her and asked, you've never had ramen before? Seeing her shake her head negatively, he nodded in understanding. All right, I think you'll enjoy this then. Old man, we'll take 2 miso ramen to get us started off. Make sure to really work your magic on Asia-chan's bowl. It's her first time having ramen. Tyuki grinned at Naruto and said, 1 super deluxe miso ramen coming right up for the lovely lady. Naruto chuckled a bit before turning to look at Asia. So what exactly have the villagers been telling you about me? Asia frowned and tapped a finger against her chin. Well, they said you were some big, evil demon with 9 tails that enjoys causing destruction for the fun of it. They said that you had corrupted a bunch of innocent children and that you devour babies. They claimed that the 4th Hokage sealed you in your current form to make it easier to kill you, but... Naruto blinked owlishly for a moment before shaking his head in mild disbelief. Wow. Just how many people are breaking the old bastard's law and getting away with it? He wondered aloud. Sighing softly, he looked into Asia's eyes and said, well, I can tell you that that's all false. My name is Naruto Uzumaki and I was born the day of the Kyuubi attack. You see, on the night of my birth, the Kyuubi attacked the village. I don't know why or what exactly happened. All I really do know is that shortly after my birth, my parents had no choice but to seal the Kyuubi within me, thus making me its jailer. So you see, Asia-chan, I am not the demon. I simply hold the beast at bay. Or at least, I used to. When Naruto sighed, Asia placed a gentle hand upon his and asked, what do you mean? Did something bad happen to you? Naruto smiled at her before giving a nod to Kaneko in greeting when she entered the stand and ordered some ramen for herself. Turning back to Asia, he said, a boy named Sasuke Uchiha. Seeing her eyes light up in recognition of the name, the spiky-haired blonde sighed and asked, what have the people told you about him? I'm curious. Asia smiled brightly and said, they said that Sasuke is a prodigy unlike anything this village has seen before. He's smart, kind, wise, and incredibly powerful. They say that he'll eventually be able to control the demon and they'll all finally be safe from its blight upon the world. They even said that he's destined to be Hokage someday. Despite herself, Kaneko snickered in amusement at that. Naruto chuckled softly at that before he looked into Asia's eyes and shook his head. Sorry to say, but Sasuke is none of those things. Years ago, Sasuke's brother killed damn near everyone in the Uchiha clan, sparing only his little brother. Now, most people would have you believe that Itachi killed them to test his power and only Sasuke escaped alive. The truth is, nobody really knows why Itachi did it. Personally, I think the Uchihas were planning something big and he was ordered to take them out. As for sparing Sasuke, Itachi didn't want to kill Sasuke. It's as simple as that. Sighing softly, Naruto ran his fingers through his hair, brushing it back. Anyways, Sasuke became arrogant and so full of himself. He belittles everyone, treats people as if they're worth less than dirt, let's just say he's not a good person. The people of the village have spoiled him rotten and he thinks he can get away with doing whatever he wants. Frowning deeply, Naruto turned when his ramen was placed in front of him. Muttering a quick prayer, He ate a little before continuing. When we graduated, I was placed on a team with Sasuke Uchiha and Sakura Haruno with Kakashi Hatake as our Jonin sensei. Sasuke and I hate each other. On our most recent mission outside of the village, he killed me in an effort to save himself. Asia gasped in horror while Kaneko accidentally broke her chopsticks into pieces, she was clenching them so tight. But why? You seem so nice. Because Sasuke cares for nothing but himself. He's the only thing that matters in his world. I was just an expendable pawn in his game of life. Anyways, sighing again, Naruto looked at his bowl of ramen and said, when I was killed, the Kyuubi died with me. The ex-nun blinked and asked, but, you're sitting right here, talking with me. What exactly happened? And isn't the Kyuubi being dead now a good thing? Tsuki frowned as he looked at Naruto. Naruto, my boy, what exactly happened to you? You say you died, but you're right here in front of me. Tell us what the heck happened. Naruto nodded and looked behind him towards the kitchen. Ayame-chan, you might want to come out here too. I think you all need to hear this. Clanging sounds could be heard in the back of the stand before Ayame came out, wiping her hands off with a washrag. Naruto-kun, are you okay? Naruto sighed again and said, Rias Grimori had to revive me as part of her team. Revealing his bat-like wings, he flapped them a few times and smiled sadly at his loved ones and then at Asia. I've been revived as a devil. Asia gasped, but rather than flinch away or scream or anything else that he might have expected, she instead threw her arms around him and hugged him tight. I'm so sorry you had to go through all of that. You seem so nice. And, contrary to popular belief, I think there's good in everyone. Or at least, everyone has the potential for good in them. It doesn't matter if you're an angel, a fallen angel, a devil, or whatever else you might be. But, why are you telling me all this? Gently wrapping his arms around Asia, Naruto held her close and said, it's because I want to protect you, Asia-chan. You were brought here by a man named Danesek, correct? Looking up into Naruto's eyes, the beautiful young woman nodded. Yes. He said that, even though I was excommunicated from the main church in the middle of the land of fire, I still had the potential to do good in me. He promised that if I came with him here, to Konoha, that I'd be able to help people again. He even said he had a special surprise for me if I do good work. Naruto frowned and shook his head. Asia-chan, Danesek isn't a good person. Seeing her about to interrupt him, Naruto held up his hand to silence her. I'm not saying this to be mean. I'm saying this because I'm concerned for you. A trusted source informed me that Danesek is planning to kill you so he can take your sacred gear for himself. He doesn't care about you, Asia-chan. I only want to protect you. Asia looked like she was about to cry. But, why? I thought. Brushing her bangs out of her face, Naruto placed a tender kiss upon her forehead. Asia-chan, come live with me. I promise I'll keep you safe no matter what. Nobody will ever hurt you again. Not the church, not the fallen angels, not even my fellow devils. You'll be safe with me. Please. Looking into his eyes searchingly, Asia found that he was telling her the truth. He was being sincere in his worry for her. Frowning, she returned to her stool and sat there for a time as her bowl was put in front of her. Thank you, Naruto-san. You're very sweet. I think. Looking into his eyes, she nodded determinedly and said, I think I'd like to move in with you, if you'll have me. I don't really have anywhere to call home yet in this village. Naruto smiled at her and gently petted her head. Thank you, Asia-chan. Now go ahead and eat up. I promise you'll like it. Asia smiled brightly and began to dig in. The moment she tongue was hit with the flavor, she squealed in delight before devouring her meal with gusto. When she was finished, she looked at Naruto and asked, Can I have more, please? That was so good. Naruto chuckled softly and nodded. Another round, old man. Tsuki simply chuckled and went to get to work on the next round of ramen for everyone, Kaneko included. Meanwhile, Ayame stared sadly at Naruto. For what it's worth, I'm sorry about what happened to you, Naruto-kun. But there's more you're not telling us, isn't there? Naruto sighed and nodded his head in confirmation. Yes. Rias and the old man did something terrible. My mom's been alive all this time as a member of Rias' team. They kept her from me. Rias had her reasons, I suppose, but that old bastard. He's lucky I don't try to kill him for the shit he's pulled. Ayame gasped and Tuki clearly dropped some dishes in the kitchen, judging by the sounds they heard coming from there. Asia, on the other hand, looked horrified by what she had just heard. They kept your mother from you. How? How old are you now? Naruto said, 15. They kept my mother from me for 15 years. I told Kushina that I don't need a mother anymore, but I'm willing to try and be friends. That's the best we can really hope for, at this point. Asia surprised him by giving Naruto another hug. Can you find it in your heart to forgive her? Your mother, I mean. The whiskered teen frowned and said, her. Yes. Rias. Maybe with enough time. But the Hokage? Hell no. Not after what I've learned. Asia smiled up at him and said, that's all I can ask for. Forgiveness is important, but even I understand that some crimes cannot be forgiven. I don't think God will forgive me for healing the devil. But I still feel it was the right thing to do. Naruto placed a firm hand on her shoulder and shook his head. Asia-chan, there's nothing to forgive. You were wrongly judged and scorned for using your gifts to help somebody. You shouldn't feel any shame in doing the right thing. Race and gender shouldn't matter to anyone, and nobody should have the right to decide who lives and who dies. You did the right thing and you should be proud of yourself for it. Screw what those people might think and say about you. I think you're a wonderful person, Asia-chan. Asia blushed and tightened her hold on him. Resting her head against his chest, she said, thank you, Naruto-san. May God bless you. Seeing him flinch and hold his head in pain, Asia blinked a moment before realization struck her. I'm so sorry. I forgot. Naruto chuckled nervously and massaged his temples to try and stave off the growing headache. It's fine, Asia-chan. I'm not upset with you. You didn't mean any harm by it. Just try to be a bit more careful from now on, okay? Nodding in understanding, Asia offered him a bright smile before she returned to her meal and began consuming it again. Moaning slightly in delight, she couldn't help but hum happily to herself. Seeing this, Naruto chuckled and thought, so long as I live, nobody will ever harm you again, Asia-chan. Rias scowled as she looked at the fallen angel standing before her. You must be Rainer. How dare you put my Naruto-kun in such a dangerous situation? What were you thinking? You're Naruto-kun. Someone's feeling a little possessive. Rainer commented bluntly. After a moment, she shrugged her shoulders and said, he won't be in any danger if we hurry and eliminate Danesek, Freed, and the other scumbags Danesek has recruited. My friends Calawarner and Mittelt will help us to destroy them. Now, are you going to help me deal with them, or do I need to ask Naruto-kun to help me kill them? Rias' scowl deepened as she growled out, don't bring him into this. We'll help you put down those monsters that dare to threaten Naruto-kun's existence, but afterwards. Rainer frowned at her and shook her head. I'm not leaving Naruto-kun alone. I stayed out of his life for as long as I did because I knew how you and your peerage would have reacted to me trying to reach out to him. I'm not just going to give up on him now that I've finally talked to him. Face it, Grimori, I'm in his life now and I'm not leaving. Rias looked about ready to blow a gasket, but after a while, she reined in her temper and took a few deep, calming breaths. Fine. But, nope. Not gonna hear it. Now let's go, Rainer said, waving her off dismissively as she began making her way towards the church. Mittelt and Calawarner would meet them there and they could put a stop to Danesek and his evil ways. The beautiful redhead gawked in disbelief at being dismissed so easily. Eyes narrowing, she mumbled to herself, Naruto-kun's first time will be mine, if I have anything to say about it. And with that, she and her peerage, sans Naruto and Kaneko, made their way towards the abandoned church in the red light district. They had some evildoers to exterminate and an innocent young woman to protect. The battle against Danasik, Freed, and the other enemies could hardly even be called a true battle. Rias had been so pissed off by freaking everything that had been going wrong lately, and now to learn her Naruto was in danger because of the stupid fallen angel known as Rainer. It was just a bit too much for her. Shortly after entering the church, Rias didn't even wait for a sign to begin, nor did she wait for anyone to speak. Instead, she walked forward, calm as can be, until her enemies began to approach her. As soon as they did, she raised her hands to her sides and snarled out, "Begone pests. Nobody will ever hurt my Naruto-kun." And with that, she proceeded to unleash her immense power, a power referred to as the power of destruction upon the fools that had dared to encroach upon her territory. No, what happened could never be referred to as a battle. To imply such a thing would give the baddies too much credit. What took place in the rundown church could best be described as a massacre. Brutal, efficient, and deadly, these words described Rias and her power quite well. Not even Danasik or Freed had escaped her wrath. The two of them were the last obstacles in her path and she didn't even give them time to think, let alone flee to safety. No, Rias destroyed them. Blinking a couple of times in shock, and a terrifying feeling of horror, Rainer looked at Rias, whose body was still emitting that same deadly aura as before. Holy fuck. Note to self. Do not piss off Rias Grimori. Then again, if she tries to keep me from my darling Naruto-kun, we will have a fight on our hands. As if sensing eyes upon her, Rias turned around and smiled sweetly at Rainer and the others. Is something the matter? She asked pleasantly. Everyone quickly shook their heads. Rias-sama. Are you going to be okay? Kiba asked cautiously. The beautiful redhead continued to smile as she turned her gaze to her knight. I'm fine. Perfectly fine. Why? What could possibly be wrong with me? Everyone decided to simply let the matter drop. They were too terrified of Rias in her current state to even try to broach the subject. However, after taking a moment to think on it, Akeno stepped closer to Rias and held her hands up, trying to show she wasn't a threat. Once she was close enough, she waited for Rias to calm down some before placing her hand on her master's shoulder. Rias, maybe we should try and talk to Naruto-kun. I think he deserves to hear the whole truth from us before the Hokage can poison his mind against us. Rias closed her eyes and did her best to calm herself. After a time, her power receded back into her body and she slowly reached up, clinging to Akeno's shirt. Burying her face in her queen's neck, the redhead began to sob. I don't know if I can. He's already so angry with me. Her whole body was quivering at this point. I don't want him to hate me. I never wanted him to hate me. I didn't think it would happen. I didn't think I'd fall in love with him. But I did. And now that he's so angry at me, it hurts. It really hurts. What if, by telling him the whole truth, he starts to really hate me? What if he doesn't want me in his life anymore? I can't do this, Akeno. I don't want to lose him. Akeno smiled sadly at her dearest friend and held her close, gently running her fingers through the redhead's long tresses. Rias, sometimes you just have to take a risk and hope for the best. If Naruto learns the truth from Hiruzen, then we'll probably lose him forever. You know how that man is. What he's like. Now that things are the way they are, and Naruto-kun has started down a spiral of anger and hatred, distrust and paranoia, sighing, she closed her eyes and rested her chin atop her friend's head. It's the perfect time for Hiruzen to swoop in and deal the finishing blow. If we don't tell him first, Hiruzen will twist the truth around and then Naruto will really hate you. We can't let that happen. Rias flinched and clung tighter to Akeno's shirt. Taking some time to think everything over, she looked up into her friend's eyes and asked, should we go tell him now? I don't know if I can. But I don't want to lose him because of that wretched man. Please, take me to him. Akino nodded and smiled kindly at her king before petting her hair gently. Sure. Rias. Looking to the others, the sadomasochist smiled at them pleasantly and said, "We're going to pay a visit to Naruto-kun. Please come with us. You all deserve to hear the truth as well. I just hope this doesn't blow up in our faces." Kiba simply smiled and said, "Of course. I think he should be home by now, don't you think? Let us pay him a visit, then." Rainer and her friends, Mittelt and Kalawarner, frowned for a moment before they nodded in agreement. "I want to see how Asia's doing as well, so we'll come with you. But if you upset Naruto-kun more and cause him more stress, we'll be having words." Rias looked calmly into the woman's eyes and said, "What I have to tell him will hurt, but he deserves to hear the truth from me and not that old bastard. I can't guarantee how Naruto-kun will take it, but it's pretty much guaranteed that he'll be upset. More than he already is." The fallen angel frowned for a time, but eventually nodded her head in acceptance. "Very well. All we can do is be there for him and help him through this whole process. Thank you. Let us be off," Rias said before she used her sleeves to wipe her eyes free of the tears. "Naruto-kun, I'm coming. Please, please don't hate me for this." Naruto's home. When Naruto and his friends entered his home, he and Kaneko quickly took notice that Kushina wasn't home. Frowning in thought for a moment, Naruto soon brought his fist down against the palm of his other hand and smiled. "She did say she needed to shop for groceries. Guess we'll be seeing her a little later, then." Turning back to Asia and Kaneko, he smiled kindly at them before inviting them inside. Taking seats upon the various pieces of furniture, Naruto smiled at Asia and said, "Well, Asia-chan, this is our home. You'll always be safe here, and I'm going to do my best to make sure you stay happy as well. I'd offer you some cookies or something, but I don't think we have any food just yet, let alone tasty snacks like those." The blonde healer smiled at her new friend and said, "That's all right. Thank you for thinking of me, at least. I'm very grateful to you, Naruto-kun. You've been far kinder to me than anyone I can remember. I've had more fun with you than I've ever had before. You've made me happy today. I can't help but wonder if this is what it's like to have a brother. To have family." Naruto wrapped an arm around Asia and hugged her closer to him. "Well, if you want me to be your honorary big brother, then I'll be glad to accept that role. I'll be the best big brother you could have ever asked for." Giggling a bit, Asia nestled against her new friend and closed her eyes. "Thank you, Naruto-kun. I think I'm just going to rest here for a little while." Naruto chuckled a bit, but before he could say anything, he heard Asia's soft breathing, signifying that she had fallen asleep while leaning against him. As her breath brushed against his neck, Naruto felt a pleasant tingle throughout his body. Blushing, he did his best to calm his nerves, but with every breath, he'd feel that feeling more and more. It was getting to be a bit too much stimulation. Suddenly, the door opened and in walked Kushina, carrying with her numerous bags. Looking at her, he was about to offer to help her, but she shook her head at him. "It's okay. Kaneko can help me. You just stay right there. Don't want to wake your new friend now, do you?" The blonde simply smiled in thanks and watched as Kaneko went to assist the bishop. He watched them for a short time before he returned his attention to his sleeping companion. Gently squeezing her arm to show his support, he brought her closer against him and said quietly, "Nobody will ever hurt you again, Asia-chan. Let your new brother deal with everything." After a period of silence between everyone, Naruto was caught off guard when Kushina began to speak from her place in the kitchen. "Naruto-kun, you should know that Rias went with your new friend, Rainer, to deal with the threat. They'll have everything taken care of shortly, I'm sure." Seeing her son nod, signifying that he understood, Kushina soon entered the room and sat down in one of the free chairs. Looking into his eyes, she said, "I'm sure you suspected it as well, but I believe Akino knows more than she's letting on. She and Rias are likely hiding even more from all of us. I don't know what it could be, but..." Before either of them could say any more, A chime sounded throughout the house. Sighing to herself, Kushina stood up and opened the front door to see who could be disturbing them. Eyes widening slightly at what she saw, she soon narrowed them and stepped out of the house. Approaching the gate that barred entrance into her home, she asked, "What are you doing here, Rias?" The busty, crimson-haired woman frowned and asked, "Can we please come in, Kushina? There's something important we need to discuss, and it involves Naruto-kun." Frowning at her, Kushina was ready to snap at the woman. However, rather than blow up at her king, she asked, "Can this wait? I think Naruto-kun has been through way more than enough today. He needs his rest." Rias shook her head and said, "It's best if we get this out of the way now, before Hiruzen can act to make things even worse than they already are. I wouldn't put it past him to pull something soon. So please, let us in so we can talk." Kushina scowled for a time before she eventually grumbled irritably to herself and allowed Rias and the group with her into her home. Sealing the gate shut once the last of them had come in, she activated the seals once more and followed them into the house. Seeing the look her son was giving her, Kushina sighed heavily and said, "Sorry, Naruto-kun, but I think this is important. Let's hear her out before we do something we might regret." Frowning deeper, Naruto was about to say something when he felt Asia's hand gently tugging at his shirt. Glancing down into her eyes, he frowned in confusion and opened his mouth to ask a question. However, she spoke up before he could. "Please, hear her out. I don't know what's happened between you, but you shouldn't carry around such hatred and anger in your heart. That's easier said than done, Asia-chan. But alright, I'll hear her out." Looking into Rias' eyes at this point, he asked, "What did you need, Rias?" Rias flinched at the lack of the chan suffix, but decided not to dwell on it. Closing her eyes, she took a deep breath in and released it slowly. She repeated this a few more times, obviously trying to calm her nerves so she could speak clearly. "Naruto-kun, it's really important that you hear this. You deserve to know the whole truth and not whatever BS Hiruzen will try to feed you. If I don't come out and tell you this now, then Hiruzen will most assuredly approach you and tell you his version of things." Rias began. "Naruto-kun, I've always known you were special. Ever since you were born, I had my eye on you. Something about you intrigued me. It wasn't the fact that you housed the Kyuubi, nor was it your connection to your parents. Heck, it wasn't even your sacred gear that caught my attention. There was just something that drew me to you. I can't really put it into words. Sorry. Anyways, fast forward a ways and we come to the meeting with Hiruzen. When he revealed that Minato had foolishly left notes about us, he tried to blackmail me into doing his bidding. However, while I agreed to work for him, there was a stipulation that I put forth in exchange." Rias explained. Naruto frowned at this point and asked, "I'm not going to like this, am I?" The redhead shook her head. "No, but it needs to be said. It was a dangerous ploy, but I convinced Hiruzen to allow me to bring you into my peerage. I wanted you to be a part of my family. I sensed greatness in you, and I didn't want to risk losing you." Sighing sadly, she couldn't even look him in the eyes anymore. "Naruto-kun, I made him promise that he'd put you in a situation where you couldn't refuse me. I would revive you as a member of my peerage and make use of you to deal with my delicate situation. I knew you would likely be killed on a mission outside of the village, which would give me the perfect opportunity to revive you as part of my family." The spiky-haired blonde clenched his fists tightly as anger boiled inside of him. Before he could lash out at the conniving witch, Asia squeezed his hand tight, getting his attention. "Shish. Just listen. I think she has more to say." Taking a few deep, calming breaths, Naruto glared into Rias' eyes and said, "What else?" The crimson-haired beauty looked into his eyes with a hint of a blush on her cheeks. "Naruto-kun, while originally I just wanted to use you to get me out of a bad situation, I hadn't calculated something that happened as I watched you grow." Raising a brow, Naruto asked, "And what would that be?" "Naruto-kun, Peering deep into his eyes, Rias smiled slightly and said, I slowly found myself falling in love with you. You may be a lot younger than me, but love knows no bounds and all that. After a time, I just couldn't use you. I just wanted you to be happy and I wanted to be close to you. I just wanted to be your friend, and maybe something more later down the road. I didn't even care anymore if I got you in my peerage or not. All I wanted was to be with you. Naruto's eyes were wide for a time, but after a while he closed his eyes and said, and you couldn't tell me any of this before, why exactly? I was afraid. I was so afraid you'd hate me. I couldn't bear to have you mad at me. I love you, Naruto-kun. I well and truly love you. Just the thought of hurting you, of losing you, it hurts so much. Then, Naruto nodded in understanding and said, Kushina was finally ready to meet me, and you struck a new deal with the Hokage. Correct. Rias scowled and said, yes. When I approached him about Kushina, declaring that I'd be introducing Kushina to you, he decided to take his blackmail a bit further. Somehow, he had obtained a contract with Riser Phoenix. All he had to do was make use of the seal given to him and he could have summoned Riser right then and there. It was either do as Hiruzen commanded of us, in this case hiding your mother from you, or he would call Riser then and there. I didn't have a choice. I wasn't ready to face Riser back then. I was too afraid to make a move against him yet. Kushina scowled and said, the more I hear about that evil son of a bitch, the more I want to kill him. Akeno nodded in agreement. The third is corrupt and has let his position of power go to his head. If I could get away with killing him, I would. Naruto frowned at this and, after taking some time to think on it, he looked into Rias' eyes and asked, what if he's already met Riser? If the Hokage is corrupt as you say he is, then wouldn't he have already been in contact with Riser? They could be waiting for the right opportunity to strike. Everyone's eyes widened at the implication of what Naruto had just said. After coming to her own realization, Rias clenched her fists tight and said, you're absolutely right. I wouldn't put it past that bastard to pull something like that. If they've made a deal, then anything could happen. Naruto-kun, I want you to be very careful from now on. There's no telling what could happen if they're in contact with one another. I wouldn't put it past Riser to attack you at some point just to prove a point to me. So please, be safe. Okay. Nodding once, Naruto decided to just come out and say it. Rias-chan, I'm sorry. I didn't even stop to think about all the possibilities, nor did I think about how you felt or anything. I should have waited until I had the full truth before I did anything. Sighing heavily, he gently squeezed Asia's hand for support and said, I'll be honest with you. I'm still upset with you, but I can't entirely blame you. Despite everything, I do care about you. I don't want to hate you or be angry at you or anything, really. You're one of my dearest friends and I never wanted to hurt you in any way. Still, I was pissed off. I still am, but I can't place all the blame on you. Not after hearing all of this. Asia smiled at her brother figure and asked, so, will you forgive her? Naruto sighed again and said, yeah, I guess I will. But, looking hard into Rias' eyes, he said, don't betray my trust again. And be honest with me from now on. No more lies. No more hiding things from me. I want you to trust in me, just as I'll trust in you. Rias couldn't help herself as she began to cry again. Nodding her head rapidly, she said, I'll never hurt you again. I swear it. Just please, please don't leave me. I'd die without you in my life. I couldn't bear it if I lost you. Blushing at her words, Naruto glanced away and scratched at the tip of his nose. That's a little much, but thank you. Akeno giggled to herself and said, we'll all be alright. The Hokage won't tear us apart. Now, why don't you introduce us to the cute little thing next to you? She seems so sweet. Asia meeked and clung to her brother figure. Chuckling at this, Naruto said, I'm sure you already know who she is, but this is Asia Argento. I've kind of adopted her as my little sister. Smirking at Asia, he her gently in the side to get her attention back on him. Asia-chan, let me introduce you to my family and friends. And with that, he took the time to introduce each of his peerage members and Rainer. When it came time to introduce Mittelt and Kalawarner, he blinked and said, I actually have no idea who they are. Rainer-chan. Rainer smiled at him before motioning towards her friends. Meet Mittelt and Kalawarner. They're two of my dearest friends. I'm glad that you finally get to meet them. I hope you all get along splendidly. Naruto smiled at them and said, it's a pleasure to meet you both. Just out of curiosity, do you three have anywhere to live? If you don't, you might as well move in here with us. You're more than welcome to if you have nowhere else to go. Mittelt smirked as she Rainer. Oh, he's a keeper. You're just the sweetest thing, aren't you Naruto-kun? No, we don't have any place to live. We were only sent to be observers for the time being. Rainer, though, has been living here for years now, also she could watch over you. Kalawarner and I, on the other hand, only arrived here recently. The blue-haired fallen angel smirked and said, we'd be glad to move in with you. But we first need to report into Azazel-sama. He needs to know what's happened here, after all. Then, if he permits it, we'll be glad to return and live here with you. Rias sighed and hung her head for a moment. Damn it. More competition. Kushina, noticing this, giggled for a moment before saying, as fun as this all is, I think it's time we all went home and got some sleep. It's late and we're all exhausted. Mittelt, Kalawarner, go and meet with your leader. Then, if he permits it, you can return here. I'll get you keyed into the seal so you can come and go as you please. And Naruto-kun. Once she had his attention, the redhead smiled sweetly at him and said, please don't act on any of your potential impulses. I don't want to be made a grandmother too soon. Naruto stared in a complete deadpan at Kushina. I'm more controlled than that. Besides, it's not really your place to tell me if I can be intimate with my loved ones or not. The redhead shook her head and said, relax. I was only teasing. There's silencing seals throughout the house, so please make use of those if you're going to do that with somebody. Inside, though, she couldn't help but frown sadly. He was serious. I guess I really can't play the worried mother card anymore. I've lost that chance. Sighing softly to himself, Naruto soon stood up and looked at Asia. Come on Asia-chan, let's get a room picked out for you. I think you'll like it here. I'm sure I will, too. He said with a chuckle. As if suddenly realizing something, Akino shot up and said, wait. Naruto-kun, we need to take you and Haku to get your familiars. Will tomorrow night work for you? Naruto blinked for a moment as he looked between Akino and Haku, who had been rather silent this entire time. Sure. What do you think, Haku-chan? Haku smiled and said, that sounds lovely to me. I'm eager to meet whomever I end up with. I get the feeling a fox might be perfect for you though, Naruto-kun. Chuckling softly at the teasing, Naruto said, we'll just have to wait and see. Now, if there's nothing else, I'd very much like to go and get some sleep. I'm exhausted. Rias smiled sweetly at him and said, that's everything, Naruto-kun. Sleep well, okay. Thanks, Rias-chan. Good night, Naruto said before he walked off with Asia to pick out their rooms. Once they were out of sight, Kushina looked into Rias' eyes and said, I'm still upset with you, but I understand your position. I don't like you planning to manipulate Naruto-kun like that, but I'll forgive you, just as my son has. Just don't go betraying our trust again. Rias nodded and said, of course, Kushina. But, the Uzumaki shook her head and said, we need to do something about Hiruzen, I know. Unfortunately, killing him won't solve our problems. If we act hastily, without thinking this through, somebody even worse might take over and we'd have even worse shit to deal with. We need to find some way to locate Tsunade and convince her to return to Konoha to take the mantle of 5th Hokage. Rias nodded in agreement. If we can't locate her in time, Jiraiya might take over and that would just be another damn problem. He might be even worse than Hiruzen. Shuddering, Akino said, I can only imagine what he'd do if he were in charge. No thank you. As they talked, not one of them had noticed Kaneko sneaking out of the room. Well, not everyone. Smirking to herself, Rainer thought, I should have thought of that first. Oh well, enjoy cuddling up with Naru-kun while you can, Kaneko. Soon enough it'll be me at his side. Turning her attention back to the discussion taking place, Rainer asked, if we're so worried about Jiraiya, couldn't we just, kill him and be done with it? Kushina turned to Rainer and shook her head. Unfortunately, Jiraiya is important to the village. He works as Konoha's spy master and has built up an impressive network of information gathering. Killing him would only cripple Konoha in the long run. We don't want that. Rainer shrugged. You make a good point. Still, if he tries anything, we'll just have to get creative. At that comment, the women began to chuckle evilly. Meanwhile, Kiba just smiled awkwardly beside Gasper, who could only watch the proceedings with wide eyes. Just grin and bear it. Women are terrifying, Kiba said to his companion. Gasper slowly nodded but didn't utter a word. The next day, Naruto wanted to scowl at the man sitting before him, but decided to keep a neutral expression on his face so as not to alarm his guest. Sitting before him on one of his chairs was Hiruzen Sarutobi. He had that same grandfatherly expression on his face that he always had, but now that Naruto knew the truth, he could barely stomach looking at the man, let alone his damned smile. What do you need, Hokage-sama? Naruto-kun, there's a few reasons I came here today. The first reason is because I wanted to personally escort you to the hospital so you can undergo the transplant. After all, you are taking Sasuke's Sharingan, are you not? Hiruzen said kindly. Naruto blinked and said, I kinda forgot about that. With all that happened yesterday. Hiruzen nodded and said, it's understandable, Naruto-kun. You've been through a lot lately, far too much than someone your age should have to deal with. Which is why this second topic is so hard to discuss. It's bound to only compound your reasons for being upset with myself and Rias. But, you deserve to hear the truth from me. So, here it is. Naruto inwardly sighed and listened as Hiruzen began to speak. I'm about to hear a lot of bullshit. I wish I had Kaneko with me right now. Naruto-kun, on the night of your birth, I knew you were special. You were meant to do great things. However, shortly after I retook the mantle of Hokage, Rias Grimoire approached me. She insisted that you be given to her to be resurrected as one of her pieces. Your whole life, she's been trying to manipulate you in an attempt to get you on her side. I do not know the full reason behind her desire to have you, nor do I understand her circumstances. However, I tried to argue on your behalf. However, she revealed to me that she had Kushina in her clutches and threatened to keep her from you if I didn't let you have her. We all know how that turned out in the end. Hiruzen said, releasing a soft sigh afterwards. Man, it almost sounds like he believes this bullshit. If he wasn't such an asshole, I'd recommend he take up a career in acting. He'd make a killing, Naruto thought to himself. After a time, Naruto shook his head and said, I kind of figured something like that was going on behind the scenes. I'm just so done with it all. I just want to be left alone. Can we just go and get this transplant done so I can rest and relax for a while? I think I've been under way too much stress lately. Hiruzen frowned at the apparent lack of interest Naruto had shown, but chalked it up to him just being exhausted from the events of yesterday. Hell, it was true that Naruto had been through way too much in such a short period of time. Heck, he died. That'd be enough to stress somebody out for sure. Shaking those thoughts from his head, Hiruzen rose to his feet and left with Naruto, journeying with him to the hospital. If it helps any, Naruto-kun, I am on your side. I'm sorry all of this has happened to you. Thanks, Hokage-sama. I don't know if I could ever forgive you, but I understand. Now let's hurry. I'm just so tired. I want to get all of this over and done with. Naruto said. Looking at Naruto's face, Hiruzen did notice some small bags under his eyes. He really does look exhausted. Maybe I should just let him rest after this. Shrugging it off, Hiruzen led Naruto inside into the correct room where the transplant would be taking place. Do be careful with him. Of course, Hokage-sama. The surgeon said. Naruto-kun, we're going to put you under for the time being. When you wake up, you'll likely be groggy for a while. You're going to have to wear a cloth around your eyes for a while before you can use your new eyes. Okay. Naruto looked into the surgeon's eyes and said, sure. Some actual sleep sounds wonderful right now. The surgeon chuckled before he nodded to one of his assistants. Putting the IV in the blonde's arm, she soon set everything up before watching as Naruto's eyes began to close. Nodding to the surgeon, she said, give it a few minutes and he should be out like a light. Thank you, Shirley. Alright everyone, this is a delicate procedure and I won't accept mistakes from any of you. Hokage-sama, I would like you to step out of the room, please. We'll inform you when the transplant is successful. The surgeon said. Hiruzen frowned momentarily before he nodded his head in acquiescence. Very well. Take good care of him, doctor. He said before leaving the room. Might as well go back to work. TCH, dealing with all the damn paperwork is such a bother. I wish I could just burn the whole damn pile and be done with it all. Later that afternoon, Naruto groaned as he slowly came to. At first, he was confused, as well as feeling groggy. Letting out a loud yawn, he stretched and tried to open his eyes, only to see black. Frowning, he tried to remember what the hell had happened while he was out. Then it all came rushing back to him. That's right, I've got the bastard's Sharingan now. Can't help but wonder how long I'll have to leave this blindfold on. Oh good, you're up. A voice that he recognized from earlier said. You're awake earlier than I expected. I suppose that's only natural, however. How do you feel? Naruto frowned for a moment before he said, my eyes feel really itchy. I know I shouldn't, but I really wish I could scratch at them for a bit. The surgeon chuckled and said, that's only natural. Give it some time. We're going to release you into the custody of Kushina Uzumaki, okay? She'll watch over you and help you out. I want you to return to see me in a week from today. I'll remove the blindfold then and we'll see how well you've acclimated to your new eyes. Okay. Naruto nodded and said, alright. Thanks, Doc. Of course. Do you have any questions before I bring Kushina-san in to see you? Naruto frowned and tried to think over anything he might need to know. After a while, he just shrugged and said, I can't think of anything. But, if something starts to feel off, I should probably come back and see you right away, huh? The surgeon nodded, though Naruto couldn't see him do so. Yes. If you feel that something is wrong, I want you to come see me right away. I'll do whatever I can to help you with the healing process. Thanks. I'm ready for Kushina now. Before you go, do I have any clothes somewhere around here? I'm feeling a little, breezy. The surgeon chuckled softly and handed Naruto his clothes. Helping him out of bed, the surgeon allowed the blonde to lean against him for the time being until he could find his center of balance again. Once he was sure Naruto was ready, he watched calmly as the teen dressed himself. Once he was sure that everything was fine, he said, Kushina-san will be in just a moment. Take care, Naruto. Frowning to himself, Naruto said, damn eyes itch so bad. Can't rub at them, though. Can't make things worse. They itch so much. Giggling could be heard as Kushina entered the room. I'm sorry Naruto-kun. I shouldn't laugh, but you really do make for an interesting sight right now. I know your eyes itch right now, but you'll be okay, I promise. Would you like to go out and get a bite to eat? You've been cooped up in the hospital all day. Naruto chuckled softly and said, that sounds wonderful. Thank you. Are any of the others with you? Kushina nodded and said, yes. Kaneko and Rias have been waiting here for you. The others would be here as well, but they're quite busy today, it would seem. Haku is currently trying to get acclimated into the village still. She's been assigned to Team 7 as Sasuke's replacement. I'm sure she and Sakura are looking forward to when you recover. Especially little Sakura, she teased. Naruto chuckled softly and said, thanks. Of course. Here. Kushina took Naruto's hand in hers and began to lead him out of the room. Once they were in the hallway, she greeted Kaneko and Rias. Rias, Kaneko, would you like to get some dinner with the two of us? Rias smiled brightly and said, I'd love to. Kaneko simply smiled and nodded her head. Seeing this caused Kushina to giggle a bit before she turned and began guiding Naruto along once more. As they walked, the redhead decided to ask her son, where would you like to eat? Ramen Ichiraku. Perhaps yakiniku Q. You know, some barbecue does sound rather good right now. Naruto admitted. After a moment, he asked, Kaneko-chan, Rias-chan, how does that sound to you? Yum. Kaneko said in her usual monotone voice. Hearing this caused Naruto to chuckle a bit, figuring she was down for the idea. Rias giggled a bit and said, that sounds lovely, Naruto-kun. Do you mind if I, hold your hand while we walk? Naruto frowned for a moment as he thought it over. After a time, he held out his hand for Rias to take. When she did, he gave it a gentle squeeze to reassure her that he didn't hate her. Blushing, Rias smiled contentedly to herself and intertwined her fingers with his. Leaning in close, she pressed her lips to his cheek and said, I really do love you, Naruto-kun. More than you could ever know. Naruto blushed and said, I know. And thank you. I don't know yet how I feel about you. I've forgiven you, but I don't want to just rush into anything, okay? Of course. I won't try to rush you or anything, I promise. I'm happy just to be near to you. My wonderful Naruto-kun, Rias said, sounding awfully lovestruck. Naruto chuckled softly, but didn't say another word. She really is something special, isn't she? Still, she hid my mother from me and tried to manipulate things behind the scenes, same as the old bastard. Sighing softly, he soon just lost himself to his thoughts. Kaneko watched all of this with a frown on her face, but didn't say anything. In her mind, Rias deserved to spend some quality time with their destined one. Because that is what he was to them, their destined one. The one they were always meant to be with, no matter what. Don't hurt him again, Rias-sama. I won't hesitate to hurt you if you hurt my Naru again. Outside, Rias and the girls frowned as they spotted the various citizens of Konoha looked at Naruto. These weren't friendly expressions. No, they looked like predators planning for their next meal. When they began to whisper amongst themselves, the four of them frowned at what they heard. They're going to try something, just watch. Kushina said. Rias scowled at this and said, until Naruto-kun's ready to remove the blindfold, we need to always travel in groups. We can't let them believe they can hurt our Naruto-kun. Let's go. Kaneko said before she began to tug on Naruto's shirt. With the two redheads nodding in agreement, they led Naruto through the village, though the looks didn't stop. Now that Naruto was essentially blind for the time being, they seemed to believe he was easy pickings now. Not one of them knew yet that he no longer housed the Kyuubi. No, in all their infinite wisdom, they still believed he was the Kyuubi no Yoko. A while later, they finally arrived at Yakiniku Q and stepped inside. Thankfully, the people here were friendly and didn't have any intention of harming Naruto in any way. However, as they peered outside, they saw that a large group of people had followed them and were now simply waiting. Scowling at this, Kushina said, Rias, we need to contact the others. For the time being, we're stuck here until we can get some more help. Think you could get in touch with the others? Rias nodded and said, of course. Give me a moment. While Rias worked on getting in contact with their fellow peerage members, Kushina looked outside again with a nasty scowl on her face. Kaneko, are you ready to fight if need be? The white-haired beauty nodded. Yes. As much as I hate the man, should we try to get in contact with the Hokage? He might be able to help. Kushina shook her head and said, I'd rather not bet on that horse if I can help it. We can't trust him, and there's no telling what he'd do if he learned about this. Chances are, he knew this kind of thing would happen and neglected to set up countermeasures against such a thing. Kaneko frowned and said, "Damn." Naruto scowled as he clenched his fists tight. Before he could say anything, however, the waitress stepped up to them with a smile and asked what they'd like to drink. After taking their drink orders, she asked if they were ready to order, but her answer was a swift, "Not yet." Nodding her head in understanding, the waitress left them to their own devices once again. I wish I could help in some way. But right now, I'm practically useless to all of you. I don't know what I could possibly do to help in this situation. Naruto admitted frustratedly. Kushina placed a gentle hand upon his shoulder and said, "It's fine, Naruto-kun. We'll deal with them. When we're done here, we'll start taking you back home where it's safe. Just leave the fighting to us if it comes down to that." Okay. Naruto nodded his head somewhat reluctantly. Of course. Sorry for being such a burden right now. Kushina lightly flicked his forehead, eliciting a small, "Ow," from her son. You aren't a burden. You're a valued member of our family. We'll always keep you safe. Thanks. Naruto said. Rias looked at her friends and said, "Kiba and the others will be here soon. I've informed them of the situation and they're none too pleased. If these people push their luck, there's going to be a lot of dead citizens. I hope the Hokage is ready to deal with that kind of fallout." Kushina nodded and said, "Good to hear. For now, why don't we figure out what we want to eat, Unless the others will be joining us." Rias smiled and shook her head. They said to go ahead and order for them. Now, do you know what you'd like, Naruto-kun? Naruto let a small smile form on his face as he gave his response. However, inside he was quite upset by this whole situation. I wouldn't be at all surprised if that old bastard planned for this to happen. I may be blind for the time being, but that doesn't mean I can't still fight. This might even be good training to hone my other senses. I've neglected that for a while, so it might be worth a shot. Later, after the rest of Rias' peerage had arrived and joined them in their feast, the group paid for their meal and proceeded to leave the restaurant. There was a much larger group of people now, each of them just waiting for the opportunity to pounce and kill their prey. Kushina frowned deeply as she hurriedly guided Naruto along. The peerage members were in a circle around the two of them, making sure to keep close just to ensure no stray attacks of any kind could reach him. However, their luck wasn't meant to last. Soon enough, they became surrounded on all sides and they were left huddling close together, still keeping Naruto tucked away from harm. Be good little boys and girls and step aside. Now's the perfect chance for us to get rid of this blight on our village's great history. After all, the idiot's gone and crippled himself. There's never been a better time than this to deal with him. The apparent leader of the group exclaimed somewhat maniacally. Before anyone could say or do anything more, they all heard the sound of barking dogs. This was shortly followed by a voice saying, "Yar yar. What do we have here, Looks like we've got a lot of little ones misbehaving. Do let my friends through, would you please?" Looking up towards the voice, they were a bit surprised to see the legendary Kakashi Hatake sitting atop a nearby rooftop, a serious glint in his eye. In a matter of seconds, the mob was surrounded by Kakashi's dog summons. However, this wasn't their only problem. Looking around, they could see a large number of people, each of them shinobi of varying strengths. What? Kakashi simply smiled at the mob and said, "You see, when I saw a mob forming, I decided to investigate. I guess I shouldn't have been surprised that you were all after little Naruto-kun over there. Still, to think you'd be willing to attack a shinobi of Konoha. For shame, people. For shame." Smirking behind his mask, he said, "So, I decided to recruit a small army of my own. If you insist on attacking a shinobi when you're mere civilians, we're going to have quite the problem on our hands. It would be well within our right to fight back. And if some of you were to die, well, so be it. So, here's what's going to happen. Making sure he had their attention, Kakashi clapped his hands together once and said, with a large grin behind his mask, "You're all going to go home and think about your pathetic lives. I want you to keep something important in mind as you contemplate the meaning of your worthless lives. Naruto Uzumaki is not the Kyuubi. Never has been, never will be. Besides that, he's never harmed any of you. Naruto-kun is a well-behaved young man that has only ever wanted to be a productive member of our fair society. I think that's fair, don't you?" When the leader of the mob looked about ready to speak up, Kakashi disappeared from sight. Blinking a few times, he opened his mouth to speak before he suddenly froze. A kunai was pressing against his throat just enough to draw blood. Remaining perfectly still, the man glanced to his left, staring into the Jonin's lone eye. "I didn't give you permission to speak, little man. I want you all to make me a promise. Promise me that you'll leave Naruto-kun and his loved ones alone from now on, or we can start killing all of you. Believe me, I have absolutely no problem killing each and every last one of you. It might be cathartic, in a way." Shrugging his shoulders, Kakashi I smiled again and said, "Still, I'd rather not have to go through the hassle of explaining everything to the Hokage. Too much work. So, can we all call it a day and get a move on? Or should my friends and I start killing you? I'm cool either way." The various members of the mob looked around at all the shinobi surrounding them. There were even some summon animals in the mix, which did not help steel their nerves. Slowly, they turned into a quivering mess and chose to run away screaming. Those that remained behind were either rooted in place by fear, or they were too stupid to realize they were utterly fucked. Then, of course, there was the leader, who still had a kunai pressing against his neck. Seeing that a good chunk of villagers chose to remain, despite the rather clear warning to run away, Kakashi simply shrugged again and said, "Well, looks like you all get a free ticket to hell. Enjoy," the cycloptic Jonin said before he slit the man's throat. It didn't take long for the others to decimate the remainder of the mob. Seeing that they were done, Kakashi I smiled again and walked up to Rias in her peerage. "I'm glad to see you're all okay. Everything's going to be just fine now, I assure you." Rias breathed a sigh of relief and shook Kakashi's hand. "Thank you, Kakashi-san. If you hadn't come when you did." The silver-haired man simply waved it off before stepping past her. Reaching up, he gently patted Naruto atop the head and said, "I expect to see you bright and early tomorrow morning, Naruto-kun. You may be unable to see for the time being, but that's no reason to slack off. I'm going to help build up your other senses so you never have to feel weak like this again. Besides, I figured you wouldn't want to just sit around the house all day doing nothing. Isn't that right?" Naruto chuckled softly and said, "Thank you, Kakashi-sensei. I'm looking forward to it." "Good. Now, let's get you home. Hopefully they get the message now that you're off limits. Should they ever attempt something like this again, well," Kakashi said, leaving the sentence hanging at that. Naruto chuckled again and said, "Yeah. Thanks again." "No problem, Naruto-kun. We're going to have such a fun week. By the time you can use your eyes again, you're going to just love me." "I'm sure of it," Kakashi said, a wicked grin hidden behind his mask. Naruto felt a cold shiver shoot down his spine, but he pushed the nervous feeling aside and said, "Good. I don't want you holding back just because I can't see anything." "No worries there," Kakashi said before ruffling his student's hair. As they journeyed back towards the Uzumaki compound where Naruto and his mother now lived, Rias couldn't help but clutch at her chest, where her heart was located. "I thought we were in trouble for a while there. Thank you so much, Kakashi. We really owe you." Rias agreed with what Kakashi decided, though. And she'd be right there to help him train Naruto and Haku. After all, they still needed to get the hang of casting magic and getting the hang of teleporting to and from separate locations. So while Kakashi would train them in the arts of the shinobi, she trained them in all things magical and filled their heads with as much knowledge as she possibly could. "I promise, you'll be more than ready for the upcoming Chunin exams, my darling Naruto-kun." You'll become a chunin for sure once they see what all you can do. Little did they know that the chunin exams were going to be an absolute hell for each of them in one way or another. In the back of her mind, Rias couldn't help but worry that something was going to go horribly wrong during the exams, though she'd push that thought aside for the time being. No sense in worrying about what may come. Instead, she let her mind wander to the familiars her new pieces might get. Frowning after a moment, she thought, I guess we'll have to put that off for the time being. I forgot Naruto was getting the eye transplant today. Damn it. With a shrug of her shoulders, she figured there wouldn't be any point in rushing. They had all the time in the world, after all.